Hello everyone and welcome on this web and mobile track. And for the second day of the This is Learning Conf, we are welcoming Ankita. Welcome Ankita.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Uh, we will be talking about Angular. I know that you are fan with Angular. This is the Angular logo handcrafted by Alex in the background. And we will talk about Angular, but about PWA. I won't say that much about it. I will let you discover what you can do with Ankita to make your application feel like more like native application. So I will share your screen and the stage is yours, Ankita.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, that photo that you had earlier was great. It was from last night, actually. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to my talk about Angular PWAs. I am. Oops. Here I go. Okay. I am Ankita Sood. I have been working for about 5 years now. I'm a senior at Dell SecureWorks as a senior principal engineer with a fabulous team of Angular developers building a kick-ass cybersecurity Angular PWA, which is the main inspiration behind my talk today. And I you can find me like hiking or biking or just being outdoors in and around Austin, Texas, which is where I live. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, mostly trying to avoid recruiter spam, but it's there. And I'm also on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And a bit more about me. I am also an Angular Google developer expert, and I co host the Angular Plus show. All right. So, progressive web apps. When I hear progressive web apps, like what does it mean? Like what does the word progressive in front of web apps really mean? And also, it somehow for me implies that there is the existence of conservative web apps, but actually, there's no such thing. Like I know English is a fascinating language, but conservative web apps do not exist right now. Maybe someday they will. Maybe they're waiting for the right browser to come along. But if you want to take a step back, we generally hear a lot about web applications or web apps and websites. And the way to think about them is that websites would be something that you gain information from, that you are just browsing, and there's not a whole lot of interaction that you could do. Like, sure, you can maybe change the theme or settings or your locale and stuff like that. Uh, but it's more towards the information presented on it is mostly static. Web applications are typically something that you interact with and have more, the data in it is more engaging, and you can perform tasks on it, etc. But it really doesn't matter whether you make websites or web apps, like they're all truly the same. And they all can be made into progressive web apps, even if whether it's a website or a web app that you have. It's easy to then convert it into a progressive web app, and I'll talk about it more. But why would you want to do that? And here's the thing: software distribution is a hard problem to solve for the same product. And here I have examples or Miro and a Figma, which I suppose is common enough of an example that you're familiar with it. Um, they You can see on the slides here that they offer so many links based on the user's operating system. All the user really wants is to be able to use the product, and do having to then have this information all okay, like what do I have to use where, like what is my OS again, and figure out all of that. That seems a bit overwhelming of a solution for a simple problem. I mean, what is the problem here? The use case is that the user wants to use the app. And here's the thing: users remember the product and how it makes them feel. They don't really care about the tech stack behind it. No matter what you call it, like no one says, I watched YouTube on mobile or YouTube on desktop. They just said, yeah, I watched a YouTube video. So what really sticks with the user is the experience of using their product on their preferred device. And web is already where the users are. Web has way more reach than native apps. Like you and I are on web right now. Everybody is on the web. Like you don't have to make them go anywhere else to then find your app. Um, However, native apps tend to have more user engagement. So because they're easily accessible, or not easily accessible, they just have more engaging user features. But web is what is more easily accessible. So PWAs act as a lightweight and performant alternative. Often, they act as a middle ground for such users. They guarantee user engagement without the commitment. Because if I maybe I can only speak for myself, but I don't like to have to download an app and for small tasks that I want to perform. If I can just do it on the browser, or better still, if there is a PWA for it. My space on my phone is, or my memory on my phone is very precious to me, and so the less I can get away with, um, and have a similar experience, that's what I like to do. uh, PWAs offer easy access, offline first, and performance focused traits that are similar to mobile apps. And almost all of our website users are mobile first users. So, progressive web apps provide high fidelity capabilities and experience of mobile apps. And it's again, we want to focus on the user. That's what most of us are here to learn about, like how to improve the user experience. Offering a web app or a website as a PWA guarantees that consistent user experience, and high user engagement without the commitment of delivering or offering a native app. All these apps that I have here in the screenshot, they all have native apps, but they also all offer PWAs. And even though they have native apps and they have web presence, whether it is to provide a better user experience with unstable internet or consistent experience, like I said, I mean, there must be a reason. There are numerous studies out there. And there's screenshot right here is from PWA stats, which you can go to and look for yourself all the data that is being reported by numerous companies on how they're noticing an upward tick in user engagement through their PWA sessions. So basically, customers like fire, like fast, engageable, reliable, and engaging experiences. And like I said, there have been numerous studies around it, and PWAs are built and enhanced by modern APIs to deliver these native-like capabilities. They're reliable and easy to install. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is always trying to multitask and has a million tabs open. And no matter how smart browsers get with their offerings around tab organization, it's still so easy to get lost in the sea of tabs. And whether you have an enterprise Angular application or an internal Angular application or whatever that you have, whatever Angular app that you have, whatever kind of an Angular app that you have, it is can be overwhelming for the users sometimes for your app to then get lost among all the other apps or tasks or sites that they have open at the same time and are trying to figure it out. um, our progressive app web app that I earlier mentioned, a cybersecurity app, whose users are cybersecurity analysts who primarily prefer using our app on large display monitors. We tracked 38% of our PWA sessions to be desktop PWA sessions. And that kind of validated our offering as a PWA session. We had primarily converted it for it to be easy to install because it was responsive to just be easy to install or use on their devices, just if they want to check something on the go. We hadn't even marketed or mentioned about our that hey, you can also have it on your desktop as an app. But still, there 38% of our sessions ended up being on desktop. And since it's a PWA, we are able to leverage the caching API instead of relying on the browser cache. And if an analyst is writing a detailed security investigation report in a subway or like a spotty internet network connection when they are working from somewhere, their experience is unaffected and the data gets synced when they're online. So anyways, like enterprise or not, users really appreciate being able to engage or use key features of a product no matter what device you're on. It's a great business model. I mean, YouTube lets its premium members access their PW offline. So think about it. There might be a use case for your Angular app that would be solved by offering it as a PWA. And there are plenty of web APIs that are available now. So, for example, if you want to mimic native app feature and have icon badging, you use the badging API. And if you want to push notifications to your customers who are using the PWA, you have the APIs supported to do that. And really, there is tremendous power in using a PWA. It provides consistent user experience no matter what device or browser your user is using, and has app-like, and you can use, like I said, all the APIs that you have. Caching, and you don't have to depend on the network, whether the user is trying to access it offline, online, or poor, slow network condition, or if they have slow network conditions. It's easy to install. You don't have to send your users to the App Store. You can just do it from the browser. And we'll see all of this in a minute. And low development costs because you just are working on one repo, on one code base that is then able to deliver both a app, a desktop, and a mobile app experience. You don't have to have separate native app code to worry about. You just build it and deploy it, and the users always have the updated versions. You don't have to rely on them updating it from the App Store, or it's so easy to push updates. You don't have to wait for approvals from app store lords, either Google or Apple, for your versions or your apps to get approved. So when you convert your app to a PWA, especially the Angular, you get the service worker, and for Angular, you get the file added as ngsw worker JSON, and that's where you can customize and mention all your caching strategies, and that's where you will add all the configurations and APIs that whether it's fonts or images or APIs that you want prefetched or preloaded, etc. And the web manifest file, that one is the one that you can add your customization options into. And the result is a supercharged app. And it's so easy. It takes less than 30 seconds to do. If you have an existing Angular app, or even if you just created a new one, all you do is run this command, ng add an Angular slash PWA, and then you build it. Once you build it, to be able to see the service worker, you can still run ng serve. However, you'll still be then served as a local app. But if you want to view it like an actual app that would be on the server, you will open it, you'll run HTTP server or any service and open it locally, and that's when you can see the service worker in the browser. And I'll share my tab in a bit to show that. Um, but basically, the reason, again, like with Angular, there are so many features already that boost that are performance focused and boost the experience of your app. And PWA is combined with Angular just make it already, like if you remember the acronym FIRE that I had mentioned, they already make it so engageable in using and reliable, etc. um, and one of the main features with Angular is the latest version was lazy loading slash being able to lazy load templates using the deferrable views. So you already have Angular with all of these features focused on performance, and then you have the power of PWA, and then when you on top of that, when you use some of these features, you can have an even more powerful user experience. What do I mean by that? So, if you're not familiar with the deferrable views or the defer blocks that were introduced in version 17 sometime last year, it's basically a way to provide lazy loading to a small part or template or external styles or external libraries in your Angular code and an Angular project or an Angular app based on either some triggers or conditions that you would provide. And what happens is that it pulls it out of the main chunk, the main bundle, and it gets only when the condition is true, it gets rendered. The one caveat or one main thing to remember about deferrable views is that once the block is rendered, it stays in the template. So I have for you this demo app. You can type in the URL in your phone or scan the QR code or in your desktop. Either ways, what you will see is this app. And I'm just gonna actually confirm that. Okay, yeah, just to confirm. You'll see this app. It's a Pokemon app just to be able to, like view Pokemon's types, good against, bad against, if someone is playing a Pokemon video game or something like that. So that's what you would see. And as you can notice here, in the dev tools, you'll see when you go to application and the service worker, the easiest way to know that an app is or anything that you're viewing a website on the browser or anything is actually also a progressive web app is you'll have this prompt in Chrome always to be able to install it. And B, when you go to application tab in your DevTools, in the service worker, you'll see that the service worker is running and activated. And this is the service worker file that I had mentioned earlier. And right off the bat, you can see that if I select offline and still hit refresh, the app still loads. You can see that the user didn't see the dinosaur or the dino game that shows up on Chrome. The app still loads, right? Like even again, like if I'm offline and I still click on it again, you still you can configure this as you would like, but you can still see it. And the other thing that I want to show you, wait, actually, let's go back to the slides first. So this is what you will see. Again, this is the URL in case you missed it. On your desktop, you would see this. And when you, based on the operating system, because this is a demo app and I haven't really customized the prompt to install it heavily yet, um, iOS doesn't automatically show the prompt. So you can, I've added a helpful way, a message to show uh, that you can add it to the home screen. And then if you click this, the up showing arrow button where all the things are, you can tap on add to home screen, and that's how the app's installed. App that you built and is able to install it without any external steps. So the other thing that I wanted to show you about, so this is the view that you see in your when the first time when you load it, and you can see that you are able to scroll through or click, and you have these previous next um, this previous next buttons to be able to navigate between or just scroll through all the Pokemons that we have here. Now, is sometimes you might be like, okay, I have to add all of this responsive components because on the desktop it looks different. If you're viewing it on a full screen, I'm showing the full buttons, but for a smaller screen I'm showing different buttons. And you might wonder like, oh, I have to have like all these different components in the same bundle because it's one app, it's one repo. And you might wonder like, oh, this is not helpful, like I have all this code but it's not actually going to serve the customer if they're just viewing it on one device. Here's the thing though, with deferrable views I was able to have a paginator component based deferrably load based on the view that I toggle with. So let me show you how that works. We have this previous next button, but when I switch, oh, and let me refresh for a good measure. And so when I switch, you can see because I have it based on viewport, that's when the change happened. When I changed, that was my trigger, and that allowed me, that's when the this chunk of code, this paginator component got loaded. And like I mentioned, it stays in the view, so once it's loaded, and you can hide it. And the way you would do that is something like this, right? You would have this a small screen, which is a signal here that is listening to the user screen. If it's not a small screen, you might want to show a big data grid. If it is a small screen, then you might just want to show small cards and not a big extensive data grid for some users. So you can play with it like that, and you can have whatever um, different differences in the components that you want to load, and still have all of your app compiled as one, however presented to the customer or loaded on their device differently. So that was just a quick example. There are so many other things like that. It was a really small component that you probably even wouldn't want to defer load. But if you have extensive or a detailed example, like I said, the um, like an extensive grid versus like small information based on screen size, that's how you can do it. Okay, so all you have to do to convert your progressive web app, to convert your existing Angular app into a progressive web app, is run that schematic. The splash images are basically what get added by default when you run that schematic. But you will see the Angular logo that gets added there, and you can customize it and update it to whatever you would want to add. And splash images are basically when the user installs the app. Like if some of you installed the Pokemon app that I just shared, mm, you'll see the logo that shows up on your phone to like tap and open it in a native browser, native experience, app like experience. That image is what in PWA terms is known as the splash image. So you'll customize that and then have some responsive CSS if you don't have that already in your app. And then you can leverage one of the numerous web APIs that we looked into earlier, like the badging, the push notifications, and there you have it. You have a perfect native app experience. So I will leave you all with this slide, which is basically more links or more things that you can look up to continue your learning journey. I hope this intro was helpful and it inspired you to convert your app today to an Angular PWA. There's tons of information out there, and I'm also always happy to uh, answer any questions, or feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, all the places that I mentioned earlier. But thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ankita, for this talk. It was really, really great. We are lucky to have those schematics to help you to install something, to update our configuration also. So it really helps for PWA and for other libraries. So it's really, really cool. Thank
Yes.
you again for this talk. And
Thank you for having me. This was great.
yeah, thank you.
Mm.
So we are moving to our next speaker. Thank you again, Ankita. So we will be talking about migrating an Angular workspace to a monorepo. There are so many advantages to move to a monorepo, and Anirudh will talk about that. Are you online? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. The stage is yours. Thanks for this talk.
All right. Just give me a second. I'm sorry, I'm just figuring out StreamYard for the first time. Cool. Hi everyone. My name is Anirudh, and I'm the front-end lead at SpotDraft. And I'm here to tell you the story of migrating our Angular workspace to a monorepo. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about why did we choose to migrate to a monorepo? How did we execute this change? How have we leveraged the cache since then? What are the challenges that we face since we migrated? And what are the benefits that we've seen so far? Now that we've outlined what we're going to cover today, let's start at the beginning. On the next slide, we'll explore the reasons behind our shift to a monorepo. SpotDraft is an online contract lifecycle management software which is primarily used by legal and business teams for more efficient legal ops. And until January 2022, our users interacted with SpotDraft only through our Angular web app. This is when we looked at our integrations roadmap and realized that we had to build a Word add-on, a browser plugin, and an app for Salesforce, among other things. Fortunately for us, all these platforms had one thing in common. They use web apps to power their add-ons ecosystem. Given that we already had a component library separated out from the main application, and we wanted to reuse even more code, we decided to move to a monorepo. Once we decided that we had to use a monorepo, we were evaluating our options. And at that time, we had three primary options. We had Lerna, TurboRepo, and NX. Lerna was the most mature of the three, but at the same time, it was in maintenance mode. TurboRepo was being actively developed, but it was very new at this time. We were doing this evaluation in January of 2022, and TurboRepo, if I remember correctly, reached 1.0 in November of 2021. NX had the best of both worlds. It was actively developed and it was mature. In addition to these two things, it was also Angular first. It had built-in cloud caching for tasks and had a fairly active community. With the why behind us, it's now time to tackle the how. We will talk about the practical steps that we took to complete this migration with minimal disruption. Before we get into the details, I think it's going to be very useful for you to understand the state of our repository and our team. When we were migrating, our workspace had one library project and one app. We had over 300 modules and over 800 components, with a team of 8 engineers who were consistently shipping things and committing multiple times a day. This meant that the migration had to happen with minimal disruption of our day-to-day work. At this time, we were using Angular 9, and the NX CLI did not support automatic migration of a multi-project workspace. To minimize disruption and avoid surprises, we first decided to perform the migration on a fresh workspace, document the issues and steps, and then rerun the entire script over the weekend on the actual repository. I want to highlight one thing over here. Creating a fresh NX workspace was not a hard requirement. We could have migrated to NX and kept our existing Angular workspace structure, but we also had some idea about how diverse our Monorepo can be, and so we decided to bite the bullet, go with the recommended structure, and start afresh. Once we got the tests and the builds to run successfully, it was ready to be merged. It would not be a real-world experience, or I would not be telling the complete truth if we don't talk about the shortcuts that we had to take. The first shortcut that we had to take, that we had to sacrifice our storybook for a while. Our component library had a storybook, and when we were doing a migration, we ran into some issues while trying to configure our storybook with NX. And given that we had to complete the migration in some time, in a defined time, we decided to keep this on the back burner. We also had tests in our component library, and we are struggling to configure these tests or run these tests successfully in an NX setup. So again, these were something that we skipped for a bit to come back to these later. At this point, we only had 2 artifacts in our Monorepo, right? We had an app and we had a library. Given that NX caches these things, caches tasks like a test or a build on a project level, we would not have seen a lot of benefits because every change in code would have either changed the app or the library or both. Once this process, so we decided to not connect the NX cache till later. How long did it take? We came back to this thing 5 months later. Before we go into the details of caching and how it works, on the right side you can see a standard structure of a project in NX. A standard NX project usually has 3 tasks out of the box: a build task, a test task, and a lint task. And NX caches these tasks on a project level. This means that if I ask NX to run the test for a library, first time it will run the test. The second time, it will not run the test if the source code of the library or its dependencies have not changed. It just replays the test. With 44 projects, we could take advantage of the remote caching much more effectively, right? So as I mentioned previously, initially when we did the complete migration, we only had 2 projects, which meant that each commit would bust either one of those 2 or both of them. However, 5 months later, when we got back to the process, we had 44 projects, 40 libraries, and 4 applications, which meant that remote caching will be much more effective for us. Once we configured our workspace to talk to NX Cloud, caching of tests worked out of the box. As you can see on the chart on the right, over the last 30 days, we've saved over 1 day or about 1 day of computation time when we are running tests in our CI. Getting the test cache to work was fairly easy. Getting the builds to work, however, turned out to be a different beast altogether. To be able to leverage incremental builds, libraries need to be buildable. According to NX, buildable libraries are mostly used for producing some precompiled output that can be directly referenced from an NX application. So what does it mean? It just means that when a library depends on another library and both of them are buildable, when NX is building the entire chain, it would use the compiled output of a dependency to compile its dependents, right? And a buildable library can only depend on other buildable libraries. In the following slides, we will discuss the different challenges we faced while making our libraries buildable. The first and the biggest challenge that we faced in making our libraries buildable was resolving circular dependencies. Let me take you back a bit, right? Before we did the migration to the Monorepo, our source code was already 4 years old. This meant that we had a lot of code that was already in the app and it was written in a certain way. I have a small snapshot of the problem on the graph on the diagram on the right. Let's assume these two libraries, right? We have the home library and the auth library. The utils in the auth, sorry, one second. Right. So the utils in the auth pulls some code from utils in home, while constants in auth are used in the home component. Now, if these were part of the same project, these are not circular imports, right? So this code will compile. So when we were building our application as a whole, which is when we were not trying to use incremental building, everything just works because we had these kind of imports going around. However, when we tried to do incremental builds, which meant that each library had to be built in isolation on its own, now for NX, these things had a circular dependency, right? Now as a library, home depends on auth, but at the same time, auth depends on home. And this is a no-go. Like it can't build the library if it depends directly or indirectly on itself. Similarly, it can't build an app if its dependents rely on the app itself. Resolving these circular dependencies often required us to move the code around, maybe create a new library to create a new logical home for that piece of code. This process took us a fairly long time, and if I remember correctly, I think the commit that actually got it to work had over 100 changes to resolve all these conflicts. The other problem that we faced were around nested import paths and SCSS imports. The first one, if you are an Angular developer, you are used to it, right? Like you would have seen secondary imports. And so we thought that, okay, we can probably use this thing to nest our directories as well. And while nested folders are fine, nested import paths are something that NPM itself does not recommend. So what we saw was that when we were creating new libraries with nested import paths and nested folders, NX often at that time would used to have a mismatch between the actual destination of the build output and where it used to look for the code. And that often led to compilation errors. So we had to go back and fix all these structures. The second thing that we had to fix was that we had to fix our SCS imports. As I mentioned previously, a bunch of our components had moved from our application to a library, right? And let's say if your application or a component CSS imports CSS from another library, the app, we would have already configured the library as a source of SCSS files so that the SCSS compiler can find those imports. When a library is buildable, we need to tell the library where to look for SCSS imports. And so that was another learning for us. So as a result of this thing, once we actually completed the entire process, what have we achieved out of this, right? So on the left side, you can see a chart which shows that over the last 30 days, we've actually saved over 40 hours of build time in CI. On the right, I have a small screenshot that shows the output of our build pipeline, right? So when in our PRs, we use NX to cache our CI pipelines. And on the right, you can see that for a commit that would have changed 219 tasks, it was able to read 214 out of the cache. So what are the challenges that we faced? Moving to a Monorepo and NX has streamlined a lot of things for us, but there have been some challenges since we've migrated. The first and the biggest challenge since then has been to decide what's in a library or what a library should be. At this time, our team is around 20 engineers, right? And having a common understanding, a shared understanding of what a library is a little challenging, but extremely important. Because if you do not decide the scope of a library properly, it can mess with your dependency graph and introduce circular dependencies. So we rely on spec reviews to come to consensus on new libraries and code reviews to fight bloat. One of the patterns that we found useful is that we use, like sort of inspired by clean architecture, but we split up our libraries into layers. We usually have, for each domain or a feature, we usually have 3 libraries. We had a data library, we had an API library, and a UI library. This creates clear boundaries and it promotes reuse. The data layer contains the domain models and factories for tests, And this is usually a plain node library. The API library contains API calls, consolidated use cases and services, repositories, etc. And the UI library can be one or it can be multiple depending on how we want to define that structure. We don't aim to have the smallest library. We instead aim for grouping logical units into a single library. One of our biggest wins from this structure came when we had to repurpose our Salesforce application for another CRM. And we were able to ship the entire application to production in less than a week by just swapping out the API layer. The other challenge that our team has faced, although we've now finally understood how it works, is around the different TS configs that NX has, right? And what is each of them used for? A standard NX library usually has 3 TS config files. We have the TS config in the root of the library, which extends the base TS config of the repository, and it contains the overrides dealing with the core typescript compiler options. In other words, you can think of it as containing overrides for flags that affect how you write code, right? So your strict flag, no implicit any, empty returns, etc., are governed usually at the TS config level of the overrides. For these are usually configured at the TS config for the library. The tsconfig.lib.json extends its TS config and it has overrides related to building the code. So how do you want your output to be? So do you want to include source maps? Do you want to split out declaration files, etc.? The tsconfig.spec.json file extends the tsconfig of the library and it contains overrides related to running tests. So your typings for jest or karma or anything like that, right? So the challenge that we saw with this was there's a difference between serving and building. Now let's talk about a regular workflow of an engineer, right? An engineer might be writing code and they have NX serve running in parallel. They test the entire thing. They verify that the feature that they want to build or the bug that they're fixing is actually done, and they push that code to open a PR. In the CI is when we actually build the library or whatever has changed. So the one difference over here is that when we run NX serve, right? On the graph on the left you can see, or on the diagram, sorry, on the left you can see that when we run NX serve, it uses the tsconfig.app.json of the app that you are serving to build all or to compile all the app's code as well as all its dependencies, right? Now, in our case, what was happening was because of our app was old and it was definitely not, or it still is not strict mode compliant, but all the new code that we were writing in libraries, we wanted to be strict mode compliant. What would often happen is that engineers would push the code to the cloud, to the CI or to open PRs, thinking that everything is working fine. But when they actually build, or when the CI pipeline was actually building their library, it often used to find code that is not strict mode compliant. And Serve would not tell them about this because it is using the TS config of the app. So we had this difference in the feedback loop for an engineer, because when they are serving or running the code locally, it was running fine. And when they're running the code, or after the code is being built in the CI, it fails. So we had this one difference, and this is something that we had to learn. And why does it happen? Is because when we run build, right now, as I said previously, at this point we have incremental builds working, which means in the CI, what happens when we do NX build is that it builds each dependency separately. So for a dependency graph on the right, where you can see library 3 depends on library 2, and library 2 depends on library 1. What happens is that if library 1 has changed, right, NX would use the TS config of library 1 to compile and build that code. It will use the output of that to compile library 2 using the TS config of library 2. It will then use that output to compile library 3. Now, because it is using all these things in isolation, if any code is not strict mode compliant or is not compliant with whatever flags we have set in their TS config, it would fail. A very similar thing happens with testing. Testing is also very similar to serving, wherein when you run NX test, it will use the TS config of the library or the project that you are testing to actually compile the entire code of that thing and its dependencies. Another problem that we often run into, especially because we are dealing with a lot of legacy code, is that let's say our new library, which is the home library, has strict set to true. But our auth library, which is a legacy code, has strict set to false. When you write a test and you run nx test for home, it will use a TS config of the home library to compile the code in home and to compile the code in auth. At which point it will encounter code that is not strict mode friendly, and TypeScript will start complaining. Right. So this is something that we run into often. And the way we get around it is by setting strict false in the tsconfig.spec.json. Now this is where that multiple JSON actually really shine for us, because we were able to turn off strict mode when we were running our tests for certain libraries where required. But you're still able to make sure that you're writing strict mode compliant code in newer libraries, because the root tsconfig of that library still says that it should be strict mode compliant. So now that we've spoken about all the challenges, let's talk about whether it was worth it or not, right? I would say it was definitely worth it for us. Since we moved to NX, since we've done the migration, or since we've completed the migration, we have shipped 7 applications from a shared code base with a consistent design. We have 2 Word add-ons, 1 Salesforce application, and 1 HubSpot application, a Chrome plugin and an Outlook plugin, and obviously our main web application. I'm not sure how visible that graph on the bottom is, but that shows like a little snapshot of our dependency graph, where you can see how one library is being used in multiple endpoints, which is the 2 apps on the top. The other advantage that we've obviously seen is code reuse and faster shipping. We have over 200 libraries, and now we've been able to standardize design and data components across the board. On the bottom there, we have a screenshot from our internal Slack, where one of our engineers were talking about how they were able to ship something in 30 minutes, which would have otherwise taken them a few days of effort, because we were able to reuse all that code. And as I mentioned previously, we were able to actually repurpose one of our existing CRM applications into a completely new CRM application just by swapping out a few layers. The other advantage that we've seen is we've saved a lot of time in CI, right? And this is going to continue to optimize. Over the last 30 days, we've saved over 4 days of computation time, and our cache hit rate is 59%. In fact, we are running a project right now to split one of our bigger libraries, which is our component library, into smaller, more logical libraries, so that we can increase the number of cacheable items and therefore reduce the amount of time we are spending in CI. The other tangential benefit that we've received from splitting our code into libraries is a very clear separation of ownership. We use GitHub to collaborate on code, and which is why we have very clear code owners based on libraries. Again, I don't know how visible it is, but you can see that most of our code owners is actually split on libraries, and it is owned by one or more than one subteam. The third advantage, and this is one of my favorite things about NX, is that we've been able to create smarter build pipelines using NX Affected. So NX Affected is a very nifty little command or a utility by NX, where you can ask NX, given 2 commits, what are the things or what are the projects that have changed, and then do certain tasks based on just those projects, right? So if you give it 2 commits and only 3 things have changed, it will run build, test, linting, whatever task you want to run, only for those 3 projects. We've used this to actually figure out what applications need to be redeployed whenever we merge code to master. And on the right, you can see, again, a pipeline. So it ran NX Affected. It figured out which apps to run. And in this commit, we only had to redeploy 2 applications, which is the SFDC application and a Word plugin, right? And it skipped through other applications, which we did not build or redeploy. There are some other advantages of NX that we've seen, but we've not really fully explored them. One of them is having in-house lint rules. NX makes it very easy, especially the recent versions, where you can have workspace level lint rules, and that is something we are definitely exploring, and we've actually made some progress on that front. The other one that we have utilized a lot is using executors. Now this is where, again, like the design of NX actually shines through a lot. Whenever I say that NX runs a task, NX actually just delegates a task to an executor. So by default, you have executors for building, linting code, or running tests. But we have been able to use we have been able to create custom executors to run tasks on, let's say, before serving or before building. And one of the common use cases that you can think of is, let's say, spriting. So if you have an icon library in your, or if you have an icon library, what we've done, and maybe something that you can do, is that you can have individual icons in your repository, and then you can have a task that will sprite them. And if you write this task as an executor, you can actually configure your project JSON to, or you can actually configure NX to say that run the spriting task before running the serve task, or run the spriting task before running the build task. And that is how we've been able to make sure that everyone has, when you're developing locally, you always have the latest set of icons. And when you're building, it's a very seamless experience, because people apart from the platform team, or usually people who don't have to add custom icons, don't have to really worry about it. When they just download the code, or they just like pull the latest code, they run npm start or nxserve, and because of the configurations, it automatically first sprites if required. Otherwise, that's also cached, or it can just, and then it actually runs your code. So this is another advantage that we've seen. The third thing is having storybook, like very easy storybook integrations. Um, NX creates storybooks or configures storybooks on a library level. And very recently, actually, early this week, we actually did a migration of our storybook from our main component library to a separate library. So this is something that we've done, where we've created a separate storybook host library to host the storybook, and then every story there is from different libraries. So now we can have stories for obviously the whatever we had, which is a component library, but we can also create stories for other rich components or usable patterns, and then have it shared with the rest of the team. With that, I would like to wrap up my presentation, and I hope everyone found it useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great talk. That's the second talk that we have about NX for this conf. So it's really great to have it. I know that Santosh likes Nix a lot. He made some comment to encourage you. So thanks again for being here with us. We will just make a small break because we are 5 minutes away from the next talk. And thank you again for being
Thank
here
you.
with us. Welcome back, everyone. We have a new talk about two first talk about Angular. No, for this track, and now we are moving to React to talk about React 19, right, Tapas?
Yes,
Yes, that's great. I'll let you share your screen, so I will
I'll do that.
display it on stage.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going to do that. Share screen.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
The stage is yours, and welcome, and that's great to have you today.
great. Thanks, Jerome. So we'll get started. And the topic that I'm going to cover today is on React 19. And I've given a fancy name to this particular presentation called the Golden Fleece. It's not that because I know the story of Golden Fleece too much, but whatever I picked up is like the React 19 is possibly going to be the hope, strength, and also going to help lot of React developers, on the way, kind of lifesaver. So let's go through this. But before we go over, I'm just going to put a quick introduction about myself. It's been with software development, building products and people for almost 2 decades, like 18, 19 years. So I kind of shy away from calling myself front end, back end, or full stack. Call myself as kind of demand stack. So try to learn everything and try to implement everything, even if I can't. I'm a YouTuber teaching on my channel called Tapascript, the brand name. However, the channel handle is at Tapasadhikari, which you see at the bottom. And I'm a technology blogger writing for Free Code Camp, CSS Tricks, my own blog, Green Roots, and few other places. I have a tiny company, small startup called CreoWiz with a lot of talented people. And I also am an open source enthusiast, have an open source community called React Play. So that's about me. Now let's get into React. And of course, React doesn't need any introduction, but still without an introduction, things won't go well. So just a very high level introduction about React is like, you can imagine it as a component based UI library, and its job only to kind of build UI. And as it is component based, each of the component are supposed to do its job well. And each of the component is not only going to give us about some logic, but also about the presentation thing about it. The blue dots and the red dots that you see on your screen, that represents how the data and the component deals with. The blue one is something like private to a component, which is also we call a state. And the red one is something that how two components talk to each other through props so that they can pass data from one to another. That's very high level kind of structure for React. Now, if we go traditionally, at least since when I know React, almost from its kind of very beginning release when I was working on AngularJS, 29th May 2013, 0.3.0 kind of got released. And over the period of time, we got 18.2.0, 18.3.0, and by 2022, and it gave us a lot of stuff. Component-based architecture. Then it is a declarative language because you don't deal with the DOM directly. You have all the layers on top of it for dealing with it. You have virtual DOM, right? You create virtual DOM. And then you have JSX, where you can combine JavaScript and HTML-like syntax together so that your component become more presentational. That's great. You have functional component. React started with class level components, then it moved to functional component. That gave an extra edge and more concise code writing. Hooks, the reusability came into picture with React hooks. There are a lot of hooks. People love hooks. We were working on React. And then to handle things like your asynchronous call with a proper fallback when asynchronous call is happening, or it has a promise rejection, all these things to handle. You have suspense, then you have error boundary, and you have something called memoization. I mean, React came up with the factor like, okay, it has some performance issue, and now to tackle that performance issue, let's do certain things. Let's give certain utilities through which that can be tackled. So this came into picture, and with React 18, the whole set of concurrency feature has come to us. So we were lucky to start with 0.3.0 and to come to 18 release, have got so many features, build application left and right. But now, suddenly, we are in 19 beta. And it happened like in 25th April, like kind of last month when we got this beta. And with this beta, there are a lot of promises that we have got. So let me talk about a few promises and few features that React 19 promises. One is about the React compiler. We're going to talk about that and going to see what feature it provides. Then we'll talk about server components, actions, the server actions, document meta, some of the hooks, enhanced hooks. This is my favorite chapter. The ref as props, how we'll be loading assets with React 19, and about the web components. So these are the high-level features that React 19 promises to introduce. I hope that when it is coming fully baked, we will get most of it and probably a few more, along the line. So let's start talking about the first one, the React compiler. Now, to talk about React compiler, I think the best emphasis would be like what React compiler is going to provide to us, like what kind of problem it solves. So let's first see the problem, and then we will talk about the solution. And as I forgot to take the name, that when React told that there's a React 19 new compiler is coming, the code name is like React Forget. It's kind of very, very amusing name, like React Forget. So let's talk about this compiler. Let's talk about the problem first. Now, the code that I'm showing on my screen, it's a kind of very well-to-do React component, which is having a particular component name, and it has bunch of props that is taking. It's a product list component, it's a product page component, which take bunch of products and a heading. And from the products, I am actually calling a function called getFeature to get the featured products. And also from the products, I'm doing a .length to get the total number of products to show as a heading. Now, this total number of products and the title, the heading, basically whatever I'm passing, I am passing it to another child component called heading so that I can show the heading like 3 products or things like that. And this products array, assume that it is an array, I'm passing it to product list component so that I can list down all the products. And at the end, I'm showing the featured products, or whatever you want, you can actually show this component. That's the beauty of React, that you can compose and build. And this featured products, basically taking the data from this featured products, this particular variable that I am actually creating from the products props. So this is a very, very basic component, React component. Now, if this component can be broken into component structure, you would see things like you have a product page, then you have heading component, you have product list component, you have featured products component. And the product page component gets products and heading as props, passing heading and total products to heading, another component, passing only the products props to product list, and passing featured products to featured products component, right? This is how the structure, exactly the left side component. Now, the problem with this is, like, let's say that first render, there is no problem. But the second render, there's this particular heading props gets changed. Now, if this heading props gets changed, in the ideal situation, what should happen is like this heading props is going only to this particular component. The heading props doesn't have anything to do with product list or the featured products. But in React, in the next render, what will happen? It is going to render everything. It is going to re-render stuff. So this re-rendering, unnecessary for other components, which should not be impacted and affected, it's the problem in React itself. And that's where the problem was recognized, some years back. And that's when they introduced something like React.memo. So with React.memo, what we can do, we can tell a particular component like here, unless otherwise your dependencies are changing really, you don't have to really re-render. So that's what we are actually telling with React.memo. So with React.memo, we can actually safeguard this product list component, saying that unless otherwise this product is changing, you really don't have to re-render yourself. So React has already introduced this React.memo. And there are other things also, like along with React.memo, we have few other controls, like we have use memo, we have use callback, all these things are there. Now, if any of the React developers is listening to me right now or later point in time, I personally think you have to tell me that since the introduction of React memo, use callback, the React code has started really bloating out. I mean, whether you look into any open source project or look into our own code, you will see like there are places where we are looking for an opportunity to use React memo, React use memo, or use callback, without really realizing like what kind of impact it might happen. There might be a place where you don't need a caching kind of feature. Why would you use memo, right? Or even if you really need it, once you look into that code, it looks really garbage, because there are a lot of this use memo, use callback, React memo, all these things are there. Now, the great part of React 19 compiler is going to take away all these things from our side. The headache will be with React compiler to do the all performance tuning by itself. It is going to take care of all this memorization. It is going to take care of all this performance tuning, so that as a developer, we don't have to really write React memo, use callback, all these things ourselves. So this is a great thing that's coming in. And If you are on social media, you probably have seen this post. It happened a couple of days back. So React compiler is open source. Nobody stops us from going to GitHub and start looking into what is coming and even to contribute if you are an open source enthusiast. So that's about React compiler. We'll move to another great thing called server components. So server components, I think before React 19 really broadly announced about the server components coming into picture, Next.js, since it's 13.4, has already started talking about server components a lot. So if you're a Next.js developer, you already know server components, that what exactly it does. But if you are not, probably I'm going to take you through a few slides through which you would be understanding like what server components are and how is it going to really help us in the long run. So let's talk about that. Before we talk about server components, let's quickly check on the client server thing, a regular client server thing, like how it works. The client, maybe your handheld device or your laptop or wherever you are accessing this particular application from. And then there is a server, which could be on cloud or a database, or a particular server is residing somewhere remotely, right? Now, what do? We, as from the client to the server, we make a request. And once the request is done, we get a response back. Once the response comes, we make our application alive so that our users can use it. And that continues for each of the things. That's basically a very high level client server thing. Now, if we put focus on the client side of things, that's how the React has been, over the years, how things happen and what are the challenges that we kind of get through with this client kind of paradigm. Let's talk about that. So let's assume that we have a component called course wrapper. Inside the course wrapper component, there are two more components. One is called course list, and below all the testimonials about that particular course. Now also assume that each of those child component, course list and the testimonials, make their own asynchronous call. It means course list will make a call, fetch call, get the list of courses and render. Testimonials also do the same thing. It is going to make the call, get the testimonial list and rendering, right? Now in this case, there might be a situation that the course list call is coming back with this response with little bit of delay. There are latency because network is not in your hand. You really don't know after making a request when the response will come back. It might have a delay. So in those cases, what might happen is like you might have a layout shift. You have things like to manage by yourself, like based on which response is coming first. And you have a lot of things to do in the client side itself because your data is residing on the server. So here also we have this client, and in that client, we have say two components, like we have course list and the testimonial, and you have a server. Now the client side makes a request from the course list. The response is delayed a little bit. The course wrapper comes, then you have the request for your testimonials. Then the testimonials come, testimonials appears. Now what happened in this time, the course list would not have come at all. Now once the course list appear, it might just push the testimonial at the bottom and you might see a flickering, right? So this kind of problem can happen. And of course, you are actually pulling everything on the client side, so everything on the browser. And when we talk about development and our customers are talking about using our products, of course, the speed of the product, the latency that you're talking about, controlling the latency, the kind of performance load that you're putting on your browser itself are the things that to take care. And I don't have to talk about the SEO. It's really a game changer for many companies for their websites. So that also is a big sacrifice if you are doing everything on the client side. Now, on the contrary, if we have server-side things, if we have server-side components, now how would you visualize the server-side components? Again, the client-server thing, nothing changes, same component. But instead of all these components reside on the client side, and after getting the data, React put its magic and make it like hydrated, making it like active, making it like working on the client. Instead of that, how about pushing the component to the server side itself? How about making the component co-located with your server itself so that your component actually get baked? Whenever there is a call, your component talk to server, get the result back, talk to server, get the result back, and your component is now completely baked, a baked HTML with data, and it just come back to your client side with all the data possible. Only thing that React does on top of it is it does all kind of activations of the client side interaction. For example, a click has to happen. So the click has to happen on the client side because on the server, you cannot do any kind of click event. It has to happen on the browser side. So that those activities React has to sprinkle now, but your all data, everything along with the component is already present on the client side. So this is SEO friendly. This will not have the kind of network waterfall we have seen in the client only component. So this is really a better approach that React 19 is taking forward. All right, to move forward, we'll talk about actions. Actions, to talk precisely, it is about the server actions. So what server action is? Now, if we are a web developer, and from our like kid age, we are seeing forms. Like since we started learning HTML, we are seeing forms. How does form work? So you have a form over here, and it has one input field, text field, where you can actually put a search term, and there is a button. You click on that, and then you have on submit. Once you click on the submit button, your on submit gets called. You have a callback function over there called perform search. Now the perform search will be called. What will you do with the perform search? In perform search, you will get the event. From event, you can get the form data. After that, all these things you will be doing on the client side. Now, we just now learned about the advantage of server side or the server component. So we can actually do a lot of this work instead of doing in the client side at the server side itself. For example, actions like sending an email. You don't want to do it in the client side, rather you want to put it in the server side. Or generating a PDF, maybe, right? You don't want to do it in the client side. It might take a lot of time, and you want to put it on the server side. So the server action is possible, or will be possible in React 19, where we can utilize the action attribute of form, which is there since ages. And what we can do is, like on action attribute, whenever the form gets submitted, we will be able to call a server-side action. And inside the server-side action, we can do everything that is possible at the server side. So it means if you have a Postgre or MongoDB, or if you have Mongoose, you can directly import Mongoose into that perform search. You can do all the database interaction quite directly. That would be possible. Otherwise, it was not possible. Here, one catch is, like for server action, you have to use the directive called use server, the one that you see at the top over here, use server, to tell React compiler that you are dealing with the server action. So that's the biggest change that's coming, how we'll be handling form. One of the changes. Now, next thing is the document meta. Though it's a small change, I would say, but the impact is huge. Now, HTML is the king, right? We all know. In HTML, doing SEO probably the easiest, because everything is kind of static, including its metadata. Like you have title, you have the meta description and all these facts, right? Now, if you want to modify some of these things dynamically, it's very hard. With React is really, really hard. And that's the time you won't treat React as a declarative language. You go kind of in the DOM level, do the document.query, and then you try to get the title, try to have a use effect and change stuff. Instead of that, it should happen much more organically. That's what's going to happen in React 19, where in your component, you can define what's going to be the title, of your application. So you can dynamically manage that. You can also give the meta description. So for your SEO, depending on which page you are in and where you are translating to, you can control your meta much, much more organically. So that's another thing that's going to come, and you will see this impacting. All right, so enhanced hooks, a great section. So we'll get into some of the hooks. So what are hooks in React? It's a function, but it's a function with a lot of React sense, in a way that it has is state and effect that it can manage. And also it brings a lot of reusability. And it helps that your component should be as dumb as possible. I don't like the word dumb though. It means that it should be as presentational as possible, and all the side effects and the kind of reusable state management, you can take it out into a separation and you create hooks, right? React by default give you a bunch of hooks. On top of that, you can also create many custom hooks. Now, we spoke about the memo and all this stuff. Use memo, use callback, react.memo. You don't need them once React 19 comes. You really have to forget them. You can forget them. Instead, there are a bunch of new hooks that are coming in. One is called use. We're going to talk about that. And there are a lot of things around form. Because if you see in many applications, form is like a first-class citizen of your application. You have forms. Without forms, there is no application. So there are a lot of the advantages of using some of these hooks on the form that's going to come. So we're going to talk about some of these hooks as well. So the first hook that I'm going to talk about called use. And for that, I'm going to show this code. And as a React developer, you would have seen this code in your sleep as well. Because no React developer is happy without use effect. That's the way that you manage effect in your component. But though you like use effect, you like to use it, but somewhere you hate it because you have to do a lot of code over there. And then you have to do at times like a lot of thinking. Okay, this use effect I have to run is a side effect. I have to run based on what some state gets changed or something else. So a lot of permutation, combination, and all these things. But why am I doing this? One of the side effects could be I'm just making an asynchronous call and getting some data from the server. But I cannot make this asynchronous call in such a way that I'll be simply writing a function over here, an asynchronous function. With await, I will write it over here. I cannot do it because to make it await, I have to make this one async, and I cannot do it async. So I have to use effect. I have to go in this way. Now, the great thing, and this is probably the one thing that I am really looking for, is like we can get rid of use effect, in React 19. Instead of that, is giving us a hook called use, through which you can actually resolve the promises after making the fetch call and getting the data. So you can have now an asynchronous function anywhere within your component itself at the top level, outside of your component, or in another file. You can just import it into your component and then pass that particular call, which returns a promise, to this use hook. And that's going to resolve and give you the value. And this value, the best part is you are going to use straight away inside your component itself. So there is no use effect. It's very straightforward. It's clean code. And probably we are going to enjoy a lot as React developer. Then we talk about use form status once quickly. So again, it's on the form, form related stuff. Let me explain this code to you. It's very simple. So there is a form. It's a form component called use form. Okay. In that form, there is an action. And when the action happens, the fetch user, something called fetch user, a function will get called. And let's say that all the label, input fields, button, whatever you see inside the form, I have now taken inside another component called use form fields, right? Usually you get it inside the form itself, but now I've separated out in a separate component. That's how this particular use form fields look like. Now you want to know, like when the form is getting submitted, you want to know the status of it. Why do you want to know the status of it? Because if you know the status of it, if the status is pending, you can show it to user that it is pending. It's taking some time. So you don't have to do your own gimmick to identify what is happening. React is giving you a hook. Simply use it and get it done. So this is what it's doing over here. Like if you have this use form status, from there you get the status, and one of the attribute of the status is called pending. So if it is pending, you can disable the button so that some crazy user is not going to click on it again and again, and you at the same point of time going to show that, hey, it is getting submitted, right? So this is the construct of use form status. In this example, we are only showing pending, but apart from pending, it also gives us many other things. Pending, we just spoke about. It gives the data. It means the form data. When the form gets submitted, you get the form data. The method, the get or post method over there, and the action is a reference to this particular fetch user function itself within this. So from the hook, you can get a reference to this function itself if you want to do anything. It's a powerful concept, like with use form status that we're going to get. Now, the same thing, if you want to see visually, this is what is happening. Like you have a form where you have an email ID and a password field. Once you submit, this button gets disabled and it says that it's submitting, right? You can do this with use form status. Next thing that we'll be moving to is called use form state. What exactly it does? Another hook. The hook definition is like that, a little bit, verbose, but let me explain. It's easy. It takes a function, like fn is a function. The function is called when the form will be submitted. Let's assume a form. Once you submit, this function will be. You can give an initial state or you pass null if you don't want to give any kind of initial state. The permalink is the optional attribute, the last one. If your form is executing a server action, we spoke about server action just now. If it is executing a server action, before it is executing a server action, through permalink, you can give a URL where this form can redirect to a different page. If that is the use case that you have, you can use this permalink. Now, after doing this, what it gives you a new state when the action is invoked, when actual operation happened after your form submission. And then it gives you the return value so that you can do something with this return value. Okay. And of course, the form action is again reference to that action. Now, people who are using libraries like React Hook Form already using things like use form state. It's a great thing because utilizing this now, you will be able to dictate the state of your form without actually losing out of the form or without doing any other extra code through this hook itself. You can straight away can tell that the form is having error because of something happened. Maybe the password length is not matching or something like that. You can actually take an action on the form itself and say that you try again. Right? So the use form state is going to give you the new state based on the action and through which you can take care of the things in the form itself. So another great feature that's coming with use form state. I am really looking forward to this. And the last hook that we're talking about is called use optimistic. We all developer are having a lot of optimism. We are optimistic. With form also, we'll see certain optimism around. What exactly optimistic means? So, okay, let's understand what is optimistic means. Let's say that your form is making an asynchronous call, async operation. And once the form is making an async operation, just that you can say that, okay, this form is getting submitting. We learned that we have a hook, but you want to do something more. You want to tell, like, something happened, you give a message. After that message, something else happened. Maybe before your JavaScript gets loaded, you want to talk about something so that your user never get bored, never get stuck, and you progressively take them through the form action, right? So you're making them optimistic about the action that your form is going to take. So that's why the use optimistic would be useful. Let me just explain this, like how. Okay, so it takes two parameters. One is state, an initial state. You can give your initial message or whatever it is, and that will be shown as an immediate response to your user. Your user is waiting for after the form getting submitted, the asynchronous call to happen, but the state is going to tell the user, like, hey, wait, or dance, or whatever it is. Then this update fn is a function which takes the current state. Okay, you can pass a state and the passed value of this add optimistic. All right, so it takes that and it creates a new state. It means that it is going to give you a new optimistic state that you can actually use, right? And the return value is the new optimistic state that you can use in the message. And then add optimistic is the function that we told. Usually we'll call that with the on submit of the form. So if there is a form, let's see it visually once. If there is a form, you submitted on this one. Once you submitted, your add optimistic gets called. Add optimistic will be putting a message, but before that, with your state, you got this optimistic message one. You're showing on top of the form. In the background, the asynchronous call has been happening. Now, after the call, the submit button call has been done, add optimistic call, you change the message based on certain logic and all. And finally, your asynchronous call gets complete, your form submission has completed, and you have moved to new page. Now, instead of making user completely blunt over here or just saying that submitting throughout, you can give certain optimistic hints to them to make them engage. So that's what another hook is for. All right, so let's move on to a few other features very quickly. So in React, we have a concept of forwarding the ref. Ref is the reference to UI element. Using the reference, you can put focus on the UI element. You can do a lot of things. You can actually get hold of DOM and start doing stuff over there. Now we have a forward ref concept in the reference, but in React 19, you will be able to pass reference as a prop itself. You don't have to really do forward ref, and you don't have to really go through the syntax of forward ref, the higher order component, and all the stuff anymore. So that's simplified. Asset loading of assets like your images, fonts, and all always is a concern, because if a site is very slow and you are actually loading things bit late, you will see a lot of flickering and all these things. So asset loading in React 19, we have the lifecycle suspense through which all these assets will be loaded in the background and asynchronously. So there is a good news for that. And people who love web components and working with React, they know the pain point of integrating the web components to React. You have to first convert them into a React component, and then you have to utilize in your React component. But from React 19, you don't have to really do that. The promise is that your web component would work with your React component without converting them again. All right, so that's about the web component. So is it possible to start coding in React today? React 19? Yes, it is possible. So it is in beta. You can always work on it. You can always get those npm versions and put in your package.json file, get started. It is really possible. And I have a kind of boilerplate or scaffolding on my GitHub. If you want to just fork it, clone it, or whatever it is, and give it a try, just give it a try. You can start coding on React 19 straight away. And with that, I'm ending my presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I would like to give big thanks to the whole organizing committee of TIL Conf, Santosh, everyone who are behind it. You are doing a great job. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak about React 19, the thing that I'm very passionate about. If you want to connect with me, this is a QR code. You can scan any point in time. And if you like the way I did this demonstration, this is the same way probably I teach also on my YouTube channel. So you can check that out. If you like, please subscribe. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tapas. Thank you for being here. We can't make such an event without you, without all the speakers. Obviously, there will be more events like this. So if you want to share your knowledge, if you want to connect with people, it's a great opportunity for everyone. And we will need people in the
Yeah.
community to help us. Thank you again, Tapas. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I welcome Deepa that will talk about Angular. We are 1 week away from the release of Angular
18.
18. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you need to be prepared to this release, and it's a great opportunity to talk about the current version 17. So we are able to understand what's going on, and there is still some developer preview features that will be released. So thank you for this talk, for being here with us, Deepa. Do you have a screen to share? So I will
Yes.
display it.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. Myself, Deepa Chaurasia. I have total experience of 3.5 years as an Angular developer. I am an educator and developer. I am an educator, and I'm very passionate about open source. I love open sourcing. I have written so many technical blogs. I have given so many talks, and you can follow me on LinkedIn if you want to stay updated with latest web technology changes. Yeah. So today I'm going to be talking about Angular 17. So as he have already mentioned that we will very soon be having Angular 18. So before that, you must be aware about what is present inside Angular 17. So that we are going to be discussing today. What are the major breakthrough that have been introduced in Angular 17 is first is improved SSR support. We have new lifecycle hooks, new control flows. New control flows are really cool. I really loved it. And then we have deferrable views. It also provides us very enhanced feature. And we have signal based components. So, how does Angular improve SSR support? Before getting into it, we must be aware like what is SSR? It is server side rendering. What happens inside is that user sends a request to HTML and it renders at the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And here, our browser downloaded and then it served it. But what changes it have introduced here is it have introduced hydration here. We will get into this, but first we will discuss a little bit about why do we use SSR. First, it provides us the early rendering. A fully rendered HTML is delivered to the client before application JavaScript is downloaded, and it also improves the user experience. Like it provides a better accessibility. Like if even I am having low bandwidth connection, then only SSR provides me the smoother, faster interaction. So these things allow us to use SSR. Now, in server side rendering, you see here that in the flow diagram, I have explained that first user updates a info, then it will receive HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, and it will render the HTML. Now what here it like this step is very important. What it is doing is browser is destroying the HTML it has, and then it will render the HTML it have received from the server. But the changes that have been introduced in Angular, major change have happened at this point only. Now I will show you in the later slide that it have not destroyed the earlier HTML, but it have reused the HTML present already on the browser side. And it here you see that it will browser will render the HTML received from server, and it will show you the fully loaded application. Now I have mentioned that hydration will come into the picture. What is this hydration exactly? Hydration is the process that restores the server side application on the client side. So what it happens, it restores the server side rendered application, and it does not, like, it helps you to avoid the extra work. You don't have to recreate the DOM nodes, you don't have to destroy it and download it again. So it will save you a lot of time, and it will avoid the extra work here. So you see that here, with server side rendering with hydration, whenever user updates a data, then same thing will happen, that it will receive HTML, CSS, JSS file, and same thing will happen, it will compile the file and render HTML. But on this step, the major change will happen. It will not destroy the HTML. It will reuse the HTML it has and work on rendering the updated HTML data. And then it will show you the fully loaded application. So that is exactly the improved SSR we were talking about, that in Angular 17 we have been introduced. Then why is hydration important? First, it reuses DOM nodes whenever possible. Like, it will reuse it whenever uh, it is reusing it. That will save us a lot of time, of course. No extra work in recreating the DOM nodes. And it also prevents UI flickering. Now let's discuss that what are the changes that have been, like, what changes I have to see as a developer when I am using my application for SSR. So when I was using Angular 16 or before Angular 17 on all versions, whenever I was creating a new application, I have to pass this SSR flag to mention that I want it to be SSR support. But in case of Angular 17, we just have to write ng new and our application name like we do normally. And then prompt will give you the option that whether you want to use SSR or not. You just have to choose from them. Second, we have enabling hydration. Earlier, when we used to enable the hydration, then we had to import this provide client hydration from Angular platform browser. But now we don't have to do that anymore. Now it saves us a lot of time. It is enabled already. It provides us the smooth functioning. Now, third, we have hybrid rendering. Earlier, we had to add this ng universal express engine, this repository inside our Angular. But now in Angular CLI itself, we have this package, and we just have to add this. Then deployment. Earlier, we had to add configuration files with required information in our application source code. But with Angular 17, we have seamless deployment, and it does not cost these many steps anymore. Now, Angular have also introduced new lifecycle hook. What is this new lifecycle hook? It is after render and after next render. Now, let's see that whenever you want to use an external library inside your application, in that case, you want that your DOM will be completely loaded and it will be completely rendered on the screen, and only after that you want uh, a specific function to be implemented. Then that you can use inside after render. What after render does, that it will register a callback to be invoked each time the application finishes rendering. So when your application finishes rendering, it will register a callback that, okay, when my DOM is completely rendered, every task is completed, only then I want to use this external library inside it. I don't want to use it before that. So there you can use after render. What is the difference between after render and after next render is that in after next render, it will register a callback to be invoked the next time the application finishes rendering. In this case, it was invoking each time the application finishes rendering, but here it will be invoked the next time the application finishes rendering. Here also, like, also if you want to, like, if you want that my this particular DOM will be completely rendered, only then only then I want to do some operation on DOM further. In that case also you can use this after next render and after render method. Now, how these new lifecycle hooks will help us? First, it will avoid unnecessary DOM manipulations, because we are mentioning that after this particular task completed or after DOM manipulation is completed, only then we are registering a callback. So it definitely avoid unnecessary DOM manipulations, and it provides a safe mechanism for integrating custom DOM logic directly within your components. Then we have a new control flow. Earlier in Angular, we used to have we used to have different directives, okay? But now Angular have made it so simple. Like if a new developer is trying to use Angular, he will understand very easily that okay, what I am doing on my HTML. That I will show you this later. But first let's discuss that what it has, like what advantages it has. So first of all, it is an optimized built-in control flow, and it is closer to JS, which minimize the need for extensive documentation. Like if you see the it now, you will almost think that it's JavaScript only. And it also reduce your bundle size up to 30 KB. That is the advantage. Now you see here conditional statement for if else. For earlier, what we were doing is we were mentioning that ng if and then condition we want to pass, and then else, then we were passing a template reference here, and we are using this template reference and we are passing inside the template what we want to show. So here you see that there's a lot of code, like lot of extra lines we have to write here. And also for a new developer, it will be a little difficult to understand that okay, what is this, like it will be a little difficult to understand. But now if you say it, it just if else, that's it. Inside if we are passing the condition I want to render on the basis of this, and else block, that's it. Like as a new Angular developer, it is much more easier for me. Similarly, we have next conditional statements as switch. Switch also, old ng switch, we have to pass the condition, and then we used to pass ng switch case. Accordingly, we used to show these components. Now here you can see, similarly to how switch works in our JavaScript, we are passing a default one, and then according to case, we are showing our different components. So I think it is pretty cool here that we have all of this much more sorted and much more easier form, easier to understand. Similarly, we have ng4 also. It is also very concise right now. Like we have just if we are multiple developers, then we are using ng4 on this, and then we can also use this track, and accordingly we are showing all of this. Then what are the benefits of these new syntax? First, it will directly provide content for else, and then it will facilitate the use of else if. It overcome the historical limitations that earlier we had to use ng if else block, and then we can use it only like this. But now that we have if else, we can also provide versatile conditional structures. Now it is better from earlier. Now we also have better type narrowing in the individual branches in switch, which is not possible in ng switch. And we have a shortcut for collection with 0 items, while an optional block empty block. Next, Angular 17 have provided us with advanced deferred loading. Deferred loading is also an advanced lazy loading. Like in lazy loading, what we do is we load our component after a specific delay, because it is our heavy component. Similarly, in deferred loading, also we are lazy loading a component. You see in the definition that deferrable views is a powerful tool which is used to delay the loading of heavy components. If we have a heavy component, we want to lazy load it. In that case, we can use deferrable views. Why deferrable views? It reduces the initial bundle size. Of course, bundle size is a big problem for us. We want to always reduce it. So it reduces the initial bundle size. It improves core web vitals, and it improves the LCP and time to first byte, which means that the time your page gets when it get rendered for the first time, it will reduce that also, and it will also improve your largest contentful page as well. So it overall improve your web performance. Then inside defer block, we have template deferrable views are wrapped by a defer block. So here you can see that I have mentioned this defer block. Inside this, I am passing a component selector. Now what I am doing here is I am instructing the compiler to extract its content and lazy load it later. So what I'm doing through this code is I'm instructing the compiler to extract this content and lazy load it later. So here app component will lazy load the app child component as soon as the app is idle. So we have multiple triggers in the defer block, and one of the trigger is app idle, and it is the default trigger. If you have not mentioned any trigger here, then it will automatically take this app idle trigger. Now inside defer block, we have several sub blocks. So inside optional, it has two type of blocks. First is optional block, second is non-optional block. In optional block, we have placeholder and loading. In placeholder, it declares content to show before defer block is triggered. You see here, I have this placeholder. Okay, it has the content that we will show before this defer block is triggered, and it also has minimum parameter to specify minimum amount of time placeholder must be shown. Here you can see that inside placeholder we can pass this minimum parameter, and we are telling that this for this minimum amount of second I want to show this placeholder content. Then we have loading block. It declares the content that will be shown during loading of any deferred dependencies, and it also has after parameter. So let's say your component is lazy loading, and during that time you want to show some component at the loading time, that you can mention inside the loading component. And inside this I have passed this image. And let's say in case my all of this defer is not working somehow, then I can also mention what I want to show at that time. That will be inside the at the rate error block. Now defer comes with a set of triggers. Defer comes with set of supported conditions and triggers that will determine when to fire the component's loading. There are two options for configuring it. First is on, second is when. So on specifies a trigger condition that when the user interact with this component, or when user enter the viewport, or when the app is idle. On the basis of this, I want to lazy load component. And also we can specify that when a specific condition is true, that if you want to specify a condition that returns a boolean value, that also we can do with the use of when. You can see here inside defer block, we have mentioned that when user enters a viewport, and also we can mention condition here if you want to, then show a calendar component. Otherwise you can show placeholder. As I have already mentioned, that defer comes with a set of supported condition. So here we have on idle, when the app is idle, and it is the default behavior. On immediate, this trigger will fire immediately when the template is executed. Then we have on timer. It is a set timeout based trigger. And here in milliseconds, we are mentioning that for this time, or after this time, I want to load this component. Then we have on interaction. So when you are interacting with this button or with this icon, then I want to load this component. That you can do in on interaction. Then we have on hover of a particular icon, button, or anything. and then on viewport when template enters a viewport. Now I have mentioned each and every one of them through use case here. So I will explain this more inside this code. Like when here calendar component will load immediately because I have passed it inside on, I have used on immediate trigger here. So it will load immediately. Here I have used on timer. It will take little seconds, then it will load it after this. Then we have on interaction that I was mentioning about template reference, that you have a button, okay, hello, and you have mentioned here template reference hashtag greeting. Now inside defer block, you have passed its template reference in on interaction, that when I click on this button and when I have interaction on this template reference, then lazy load this calendar component, otherwise placeholder will be shown. So that I was talking about. Then when user is interacting with this template reference that we are passing, and on the basis of that we are loading the calendar component. Here also you see we are using a template reference hashtag greeting, and on hover over this div of greeting, we will use this calendar component, otherwise placeholder. And then on viewport, when user enters a viewport, then you will show this, otherwise calendar component. Now, Defer provides us with the triggers and also when condition. Along with this, we also have prefetching. So prefetch can take a set of conditions and triggers to determine when to fire the actual loading of dependencies. It will load the all the dependencies when the app is idle, and then calendar component will be shown. Now, next is the most interesting part, that is reactive signals. Signals, what are signals? Signals provide us new way for our code to tell our template that our data has changed. We will discuss this more in the next examples. It improves change detection and make our code more reactive. Now let's see how it have improved change detection. Here you can see that by default what happens is whenever any change happen on any single component, then we have zone.js working in the background. It will check every all JavaScript HTML file, and also it will run this change detection strategy on every component that is present inside your application. That is the default change detection strategy. We don't want to run change detection for every single component. To improve this, we have introduced this on push change detection strategy. Now in this case, if change have happened to this particular component, then only the component associated with it, the parent component of it, on this and this only change detection strategy will run. But here also you see that two additional components are getting used, which slow down your performance, application performance a little bit. But with signal, you see, if change have happened or if signal update have happened on this particular component, then change detection strategy will run only on this particular component and not on any other component here. So that is the major advantage that signal components have given you. Now let's discuss a scenario that what exactly is the signal. We have a variable x and we are passing a variable 5. Then we have value 5. Then we have y, we are passing value 3. And in z, you already know what will be the answer. It will be 8. And when we console here, it will be 8. Now we are updating the value to 10. And when we are consoling it again, you see the values will still be 8. It won't be updated on its own. Now you want your code to be more reactive. You want it to be updated on its own. Whenever I update x value, I want z value to be updated as well. For that, we have reactive signals. Now with computed signals, what we can do is we can declare our value like this, we are using signal. Inside this 5 we are passing, and we have y in signal, we are passing 3. Then we have computed method. Inside this I am passing a function x plus y, and then when here I console c, it will give 8. Now what I do is I'll update this x to 10. I will use x dot set 10. I will use the set method for this. Okay, you have to remember one thing here. If you try to assign x is equal to 10, it won't work. You have to use this set method only to get this updated result. Now, the moment you set it to 10, it will automatically give you the updated value. So signal, what does signal do is it memoized the earlier result, and on the basis of that, it will recalculate very easily and give you the updated result. Now, reassign of computed signal is possible? No, it is read only. You cannot declare a signal as computed one and then set any value on it. What is computed signal? It is read only signal. It is not writable, lazily evaluated and memoized. That's why it gives you the direct result whenever you update a value, and its dependencies are dynamic. How to create a signal? You can declare a variable count. Will be of writable signal type, and you can pass a default value. Remember, it is important to pass a default value inside your signal. More definition of signal: signal is a variable plus change notification. Okay, it is a variable plus change notification. It will automatically tell, okay, change have happened, now you have to change another value that is depending on this. Then a signal is reactive, and that is why it is called reactive primitive. Signal always has a value that is default value. A signal is synchronous, and it is not a replacement for RxJS and observables for asynchronous operations. Then what are the methods we have in signal? We have set method. It replaces a signal with a new value. We cannot directly assign the value. We have to use the set method. Then we have update method. Update method updates the signal based on its current value. Here you can see we have used count.update, and we are updating the value with 1. It will increment the count by 1. So we have two methods in signal, set and update. Then we have effects in signal. An effect is an operation run when one or more signal might change. So it will always run at least once, and then any change in signal effects run again. It will execute asynchronously. Now we will see the use case. That basically, in effect, whenever the signal value changes, it will keep consoling you the next new value of the signal. So basically, if you want to console the latest value and if you want to do something with it, then you can use effect. Then what are the life cycle change that have introduced after signal? Is we use effect, and after this we have after next render. Then we have ng on init, and then ng on destroy. Effect, whenever value in signal changes, then effect will run. And after next render, when it is for when our server has completely rendered, then after that only we want to perform some operation. So here, like we have discussed, that it will register a callback. Then we have ng on init, and we have ng on destroy. Thank you. This is all from my side. You can follow me on LinkedIn. There I continuously post notes, my handwritten notes, and amazing information. And you can also connect with me on Twitter if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you so much. This is all from my side.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you for being here with us. It's really great to see all these features, and so we're all ready for the new release next week. Thank you again, and have a good day. So we have the last speaker for before the break. I don't know about you, but I have a blog. I made some blogs in the past, and it's always about how to populate the blog, how to write, to make sure that it's efficient. And we have a solution with Hashnode, I think.
Yes.
And we are happy to have you to talk about this, so people can
Yeah.
get more confident about sharing their knowledge, creating a blog with some tools, some application to help them.
Yeah, thank you. Hashnode is definitely the solution for managing a blog. All right.
Yeah.
Hello,
So the
everyone.
stage is yours,
Yeah.
and thanks again for being here.
All right. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Today, I'll be speaking on the benefits of using Hashnode headless CMS for your blog. Yeah, so a bit of introduction about myself. I am the customer success engineer at Hashnode. I like learning new things techy and sharing what I've learned in the several communities I'm on. I play chess most times, and I am currently learning to play the keyboard. Yeah, and if you'd like to follow me, those are my social media platforms. Yes. So before we move on to the topic of today, which is the benefit of using Hashnode headless CMS for your blog, I would like us to think about what is Hashnode, right? As the customer success engineer at Hashnode, I've got questions like, what is Hashnode? And I'm sure one or two people in the audience here today might have the same question. So I would like to answer that. What is Hashnode? And also, what is headless CMS? So firstly, what is Hashnode? Hashnode is a blogging platform and a community driven to make it easy for users, developers, programmers to write and share their blogs. Hashnode is actually growing just beyond blogging platform, but to simplify what Hashnode is, we can say Hashnode is a platform that empowers developers and enterprises to build, create, manage their blogs within the tech industry. Now that we know what Hashnode is, let's move on to what is Hashnode, what is headless CMS rather, or rather, what is headless content management system. From the word headless, you might wonder why is the headless there? But essentially, headless CMS is allowing you is a backend only um, repository that allows you to separate the content, right? Where the content resides and where the presentational layer resides. The presentational layer is also called the front end, or could be any interface that consumes that content. So when you hear the word headless CMS, it's essentially a content management system that separates the presentational layer from the backend, where the content is managed, where it is resides, and so on. Now, moving on, let's bring both worlds together. Now we have Hashnode headless CMS. So now, what is Hashnode headless CMS? Well, Hashnode headless CMS is a purpose-built CMS designed to help developers and enterprises build their blogs. With Hashnode headless CMS, you get the means and the flexibility of hosting your blog on any platform of your choice, and even making use of subparts on your um, own website. Hashnode LSMS comes with a lot of features, but then I've seen users of Hashnode that do not really require Hashnode headless CMS, at least for that time. Now, when should we make use of Hashnode headless CMS? When should you make use of Hashnode headless CMS? So the first reason I would say one should go and make use of Hashnode headless CMS is when you are key on customization. You want a brand control. So as a developer out there, you want your portfolio website to be like your blog, for example, or you are an enterprise where you want your blog customized and then you would like to make use of Hashnode. Well, this is where Hashnode shines, and this is where Hashnode headless CMS shines. It allows you to customize your blog however you like, right? So there's no locking into the platform. Hashnode headless CMS is also used or is is used vitally when you want to have the flexibility of what front-end technology you would like to use. Oh, you know how to use SwapKit. Oh, you know how to use Vue. With Hashnode headless CMS, you could build your presentational layer with any technology you like, any front-end technology you like Vue, React, and the rest. And then with our powerful API, you could make you could use the content with whatever front-end technology you prefer. Also, another reason why when you should use Hashnode LSMS is when you need an integration with a third-party service. Any third-party service you can imagine. If Hashnode supports some third-party services, right? But if there are any services we do not support yet, and you'd like to go on and add that to your blog, then Hashnode LSMS is for you. And lastly, we have enterprise needs. So enterprises will need a platform where they can be real-time collaborations, AI-powered driven blogs, right? Hashnode Headless CMS provides a whole lot of features for enterprises, so they don't have to worry about managing the blog. All they just need to do is to display the blog on their platform. So now, moving on, let's look at the topic for the day, which is the benefits of using Hashnode Headless CMS for your blog. So the very first benefit I would like to mention is brand control. Yes. Like I said before, with Hashnode Headless CMS, brand control of your blog, branding your blog rather, has never been easier, right? You could just configure your blog, and you could publish your blog in no time. Anything you write is going to be powered on Hashnode, and then the content to be delivered wherever you like. Now, I would like to show enterprises are already using Hashnode Headless CMS today and have branded their blog to look different from any other blog, right? So the first enterprise company I'd like to show is MindsDB, right? So you can see MindsDB blog, it's customized to their brand, right? So this is where Hashnode Headless CMS shines, right? You get to customize your website, your blog to look like what you already have, right? Which is your brand, right? Another is Outerbase. Yes. So if you'd also want to customize your blog in so here's our CEO, Sandeep blog. It's just a simple blog, but then the content resides in Hashnode, and then on his website, it is being consumed through the power of Hashnode Headless CMS. Now, what is the second benefit of Hashnode Headless CMS? The second benefit I would like to say is our world-class editor. Trust me, our editor is super cool. It's Markdown powered, right? So you could write your Markdowns and then they will be converted, right? It's a what you see is what you get editor. It has real-time collaborations for enterprise needs. Collaboration is just easy with the editor, right? And lastly, we have Hashnode AI. Recently, we made GPT 4.0 model free for all our users. This shows you how Hashnode is interested in the benefit of our users, making it easy for everyone to write, making it easy for everyone to share their ideas, right? With Hashnode AI, you can generate summaries, rephrase sentences, optimize for SEO, chat with our chatbots that can help you generate summaries of your articles, which you could share on social media platforms and so on. The editor is just amazing, if I might say. Yes, so moving on, the third benefit of Hashnode Headless CMS would be our API, Hashnode API. Right? The Hashnode API allows you to build any blog front end in any stack of your choice, right? All you need to do is consume the content through our API. So if you are a Vue developer, right? And you want to customize your blog with Vue, right? You want to write your blog or create the front end of your blog rather with Vue. You get to do that and then use our powerful API to receive the content and then display it on your front end. Yes, so because of our API, you can also deploy your blog on any platform of your choice. Now, the last reason, or the last benefit rather, of why you should use Hashnode CMS today is because Hashnode is just awesome, if I might add. Yeah, before Hashnode CMS, Hashnode already had like awesome features that made it a key platform for blogging, like built-in newsletter functionality, right, which allows you to share your blog, your articles across everyone that subscribed to receive your articles on your blog. Right, so we have features like publish and backup with GitHub. So your articles are being published on GitHub, and you can publish your articles from GitHub rather, and also back them up with GitHub. The third reason is you could embed third-party websites, right? So we support embeddings of several websites on the editor. Yeah, and you could have multiple publications, right? So before Hashnode CMS, we allow users to create multiple publications, which are referred to as theme blogs. And now with the power of Hashnode CMS, this is more easy, right? Because you get to customize your blog the way you would like, and also get the features of like real-time collaborations and so on. Yes. So I would like everyone to get started now with Hashnode headless CMS, right? So visit to learn more about Hashnode headless CMS, visit hashnode.com/headless. Thank you very much for listening. Yes, thank you very much. Hello, are you there?
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I saw that it would be longer. Sorry. That's great. You can check this URL, and that's your opportunity to check and to test Hashnode for your blog, to share your knowledge and to be part of the community. Thanks so much for this talk.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So we are done for this first part. We have a break, so we'll be back in a little more than 1 hour. So take a break. Feel free to make whatever you want. You can create a blog with Hashnode right now, so that's for you. So see you later. Welcome back, everyone. One of our biggest changes with this event was not to find speakers. We discovered it yesterday for the community. It was about make sure that we are able to spell speaker's name correctly. And it can be a change because we have people from all around the world. And I see Fabien smiling in the backstage. And I'm quite happy that for the first time of this event, I'm able to say someone's last name. And I'm happy to welcome Fabien Vauchel with us today. I need to make sure that not to switch to French by speaking with Fabien. Fabien, welcome. And
welcome. Thank you.
It's great to have you with us, and that's our first topic about web scraping. I still need to give it a try because I want to make some application to scrap info from application like Meetup to be able to generate video out of event information. So I need to give a try, and I think that I will have the opportunity to with a strap of proxy, if I spell it
A
right.
proxy, yes.
Yeah. So thanks for being with us, and I share your screen, and the stage is yours.
So thanks a lot, Jérôme. That's a pleasure to be in this conference, and thank you very much for the organizations. So yes, let's talk about web scrapings. So just a quick word about me. So I'm Fabien Rochal. I've been deeply passionate about web scraping for years. So my enthusiasm led me to explore the fascinating world of proxy and anti-bot system. I work at Wiremine, an amazing company specializing in revenue management within the transportation industry. Our work at Wiremine involves handling millions of prices on a daily basis, which requires substantial investment in web scraping technology. Also, our setup for data collection is pretty big, mainly built on open source technology. So let's talk about a little bit around Scrapy. So I'm the creator of Scrapy. Scrapy is a free and open source proxy waterfall proxy aggregators. It allows you to manage and route traffic through cloud providers and proxy services. It supports major cloud providers such as AWS, Azure, GCP, or DigitalOcean, or OVH. And also it supports proxy services like Brightdata, Railbyte, IPULR, NetNut, and many others. Since I started the version 4 in February 2024, over 200 users have installed Scrapy. They exchanged 70 terabytes of data, received 1 billion requests, and used 1 million proxies. So before we dive into our discussion, I'd like to share with you a little story. Enter Isabella. So she is a final year student at IT school. Isabella has a brilliant mind, a lot of energy, and a thirst for traveling. Every year, she embarks for a 1-month backpacking journey to a random country. But here is a twist. This level of planning consumes her entire year in preparation for just 1 month of travel. Isabella couldn't help but notice there is a gap in the market. Why wasn't there such a tool in a digital era pumped with AI? This could be her ticket to a successful business. She realized she needs vast amount of data to create such a tool. And this vast amount of data will train a large language model to create her ultimate trip. However, Isabella is very careful in her approach to business. Before she starts scraping data, she makes sure to consider all the legal aspects. She knows it's important not to overwhelm the website by making too many requests too quickly. She also respects privacy. She only collects information that is already public, like reviews, and doesn't take any personal details like names. She doesn't sign the website term and condition either. She is free from any contract. Now that everything is clear, she is ready to collect data. So let me introduce the website she chose to scrape, trickreview.com. So I will switch from this screen on Tricky Review. So what's Tricky Review all about? It's your go-to spot to find any accommodation in a city that you want to explore. So imagine that Isabella is dreaming of Paris. She just clicks on the search button here. If everything is working, yeah. Perfect. She will get a list of accommodation, all available accommodation. Here there is 50 accommodations, and she can click on one accommodation here. On this accommodation, she will get a lot of informations like contact informations, review, locations, etc. Isabella is interested on review. It is all about analyzing those reviews to understand what the customers think about the accommodations. And by using large language model, we can extract the main feeling about this hotel. So now let's understand a little bit better how it's working. So just let me open the Chrome inspector and we will navigate a little bit on the website. So if I'm clicking on Preserve, filtering on documents, if I'm coming back to the home page, so you will see that I'm doing one request on the main page. If I want to collect all the accommodations, I can click on search. He will do the request here. So I've got the city, the different city here. It's a little bit slow. Yeah. Okay. And if I'm clicking on one accommodations, I will get a request on these accommodations. Here, it's the accommodations. And if I'm clicking on the response page, I will get all the HTML informations. Here's, I've got all the HTML, including what I'm looking for. So Isabella wants to get the review, and she will get everything here. So there is a review somewhere. Yeah. Here. There's the description, and you will have the review after. That's perfect. But as you imagine, Isabella doesn't want to lose time to code everything. She wants something to manage all the concurrent requests, the error management, including also the parsing of the HTML, because it can be very complex to manage everything. So let me introduce the framework she chose for scraping, the Scrapy framework. So the Scrapy framework is a very well-known and popular framework in Python. Scrapy can handle the chaining of requests, the parsing of response, all the retries, the cookie management, the concurrency, and its management a large community, and in addition, it's open source. So how Scrapy works? So Scrapy uses spiders. To write the spiders, you write a Python class and you give it a cool name. Here it's Tricky Review Spiders. Next, we've got an initial method like start request where you add the URL you want to scrape. Then in the parse method, we use a special tool called the CSS selectors to extract the information from a div tag. And that's it. So now let's open a real spider. So if I'm using IntelliJ, and I've got my spider here, let's open the spider. So it's the same, so it's Tricky Review Spiders, I've got the URL, and I've got also level 1. The thing that I didn't told you is that the website is super secure. I've added different challenges that Isabella needs to bypass to collect the data. Here we are on the first levels, the very simple levels. So I'm defining the first request, so start request. I will go to this URL. After that, I'm looking for the city, so I'm asking, the accommodation on Paris. When I've got the list of accommodation, I'm also flipping the page of the catalog, which is the paginations. Here, I'm also extracting the hotel link here. When I've got the hotel link, I can extract with the CSS selectors all the information. So here we will extract the hotel name, the hotel emails, and also the review here with some extractor here. So now let's run this spider. So if I'm running the spider, as you see, it's collecting the different URL here, and I collected the 50 items. And I can also check that I've got everything in the structured ways. So it's in the result CSV. And if I'm looking this file, I've got the name, the email, and the different review. So that's perfect. Isabella can easily extract that. But in the real world, the websites are protected. So imagine that we have a first protection here. So if I'm coming back to this and I'm changing the level, so there is added protection on this part of the website. If I'm starting to collect the data here, I will get a big error, which is unknown browsers. Why is it blocked? It's because when a client connects to the server, he needs to declare who is the client. And here we are just declaring that we are Scrapy. And clearly the website doesn't like that and just reject us. So we will use a Chrome-like browser to seem like a real browser, like humans. So I will change this part on the spiders. Here I can change the user agent. Here I've got, yes, a Windows user agents. That's perfect. I need to add that. Also, you should know that I must add some additional header, otherwise I will be blocked. Let me show you that. If I'm running that with a user agent, so it should be correct. But here, I miss some headers, because when you are looking to the requests in Chrome, let's see the different requests here. So I will just unzoom a little bit if it's possible. Yeah, perfect. And if I'm looking to the request headers, you can see here the user agent, but I've got also additional header here. And this additional header helps the web server to better check the consistency with the user agent. So if I'm modifying only the user agent, I will be blocked, as you saw. So I need to add these layers, these headers. So I will add the corresponding headers. So it's not this one, it's default header. Yep. I can add so the sec ch platform. I will add also this one and the sec ch UA platform Windows. I love Git copilots. It's very helpful. So let me run again the spider. So now, as you see, I can collect the different informations. And I've got my 50 items. That's perfect. So now let's move to the next challenge. So if I'm moving to the challenge tree and I restart the spider, this time I've got a lot of error. I've got only 21 items. Here I've got too many requests, too many requests, too many requests. This is because I'm doing all the scraping from my laptop or the server, in fact. I need to add more IP address. That's why I will introduce to you proxy. So what is a proxy? A proxy is a system running on the internet. It relays requests to a server, and the server believes that the request is coming from the proxy, not the real source. So instead of seeing one IP address sending millions of requests, the server will see a lot of IP address sending a few requests, and I can bypass the rate limit stuff. Of course, there is different type of proxy. We can have data center proxy. So this kind of proxy run on AWS, Azure, GCP, etc. It is the first serious type of proxy that you can find on internet. They are fast, cheap, and reliable. However, they can be easily identified by anti-bot solutions. To explain you IP ranges of the data center, so I've got an IP which is inside an IP range, and this IP range is associated to an autonomous system number, an ASN. And the name of the autonomous system number can be Amazon, Microsoft, etc. So it can be easily detected by the anti-bot systems. But there is a trick to get around it. And this trick is called ISP proxy, Internet Service Provider Proxy. So let's talk about ISP proxy and how they work. So these proxies are set up in data center, but they don't use IP address from those data center. Instead, they rent IP address from a clean autonomous system number like a mobile provider such as Verizon. So they get a bunch of IP addresses and the proxy use one of them. This means when you're using the proxy, your activity gets mixed with all the mobile IP addresses, keeping you hidden. And there is a last type of proxy, rotating residential proxy. The IP address came from a device which can be a laptop or a mobile phone. And how does it work? When the developer wants to earn money because he's developing an application, he has three solutions. So first solutions, he can sell subscriptions like a monthly or annual subscription, which unlocks features. Second, he can add advertising, like having an ad to the bottom to the application or a video to watch before unlocking features. Third, he can share the bandwidth of the device, of course with the user agreement. But that's where the residential IP comes from. And this type of proxy is very powerful because the IP address can be the same IP from a real users, and there are millions of endpoints available. So now we will use Scrapy, the super proxy aggregator, to manage a proxy. Let me show you how it's works. So if I'm getting back to my IntelliJ, I will open the terminal and I will run a Docker line, so very easily, and Scrapy run in a second. So now, if I'm opening Chrome here, I've got a login interface. I can log in here, and I've got Scrapy running with one project. On this project, I can add a lot of connectors, so Scrapy support data center connector like AWS, Azure, also ISP proxy like BrightData, residential proxy also from BrightData, etc. You can have mobile proxy, you can have material hardware proxy, and it's very easy. Imagine that you want to add AWS proxy, you just click on create, you connect, you put your credential, and it's finished. So let me show you. I will start some proxy on AWS. I already added one connectors, and I will start the connectors. So you will see very quickly that Scrapy will start instances on AWS. So it's connecting to the API of AWS and just start instances. It will install all the software, do all the firewall stuff, and you see that I've got the different instance here. I've got also some metric about the traffic, the uptime, and also the status of the instance. And as you see, I've got the IP address and the locations of the different proxy. So here, all proxy are in Dublins. I can confirm the coverage here. So I've got my proxy here. I've got an issue in one IP address, perhaps here. But everything is in Dublins. And I've got also some metrics about the coverage, etc. So now let's add Scrapy to my spider. So if I'm going back to the spiders, I can very easily add Scrapy. So let me copy paste some information on Scrapy. I will show you after. So it's the credential. So if I'm opening my spider, so remember on the configurations, I can add just these lines. So I will add a proxy middleware here. So saying to Scrapy, okay, now use proxy, please. And I'm adding some credential on Scrapy. And now, if I'm running the spider, remember I was blocked. Now, if I'm running the spiders, I will use a different IP address. And as you see, every request are correctly getting the data, I've got my 50 items. And if I come back to Scrapy, you can see that I send some requests with Scrapy and I've got a success rate 100% for each proxy. That's perfect. So let me get back to the challenges. I will increase the level here. And if I'm running again the spider here, this time I've got another error, which is data center are forbidden. So remember what I said previously. We can detect the IP address, where the IP address comes from. And the antibot system here on the website detects that the IP address are coming from Amazon. As you see, there is Amazon, which is blacklisted. So I need to add more advanced proxy. So let's get back to Scrapy. I will go to the connector, just stop address instance, and I will add some ISP proxy from Playwright. I already added the credentials, so let me add 10 proxy here. It depends on my subscription. I've got 2 subscriptions in the US. I will add this one, run it, add another subscription from Playwright because I've got 2 subscriptions, so static IP here. That's perfect. I'm running that, yes. And if I'm checking the proxy here, so you see that Scrapy is just shutdowning the instances on Amazon because I don't want to pay for that. So I'm just killing them, and the Playwright IP address are ready. If I'm going to the coverage, you can see that all my IP address are in the US. So let's restart the spider. So as you see, I didn't code anything on my spider. I just had some little configuration with some clicks on Scrapy. So if I'm restarting that, now I can get all the data. And you see the requests are successful, and I will get my 50 items. It's a little bit slow because we are going to ISP proxy, but I've got my 50 items. That's perfect. So now let's switch to another challenge. So level 5, I love this one. So now, if I'm running the spider, I will get this kind of error. There is no fingerprint. Let me explain why I don't have a fingerprint. So if I'm come back to my website and I'm going to the level 5, if I'm going to the network inspector and not filtering on doc, but on everything, okay. So let me increase the size here. Yeah, perfect. So if I'm reloading this part, doing some search, etc. Okay, it's working. You can see there is a different request. I've got a lot of get requests, but this time I've got a post request. So the browser is sending information to the server. So let's check what are we sending. And on the payload, I'm sending the platform, the time zone, and also my real user agents. So this time, the browser executes JavaScript and sends this kind of information gathered from the browser. So I need now to execute JavaScript. But I don't want to lose the automation part with Scrapy. So to do that, I will use a very nice automation framework which can be combined with Scrapy. So let me introduce the framework Playwright. So Playwright is a headless browser. It can be run inside the Docker. But for this presentation, we will make it headful. So it can execute JavaScript, of course. It can work with Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari, and it's maintained by Microsoft. And you can use that very freely because it's open source also. So let's see how we can adapt it to our spider. So let me get back to the spider. and I will open this time the spider with Playwright. So it's the same spider. I just modify here the custom setting. As you see, it's the same here. I've got the start request. I'm going to the home page. I'm getting all the paginations also here. I'm passing the hotel ID and I'm extracting the hotel name. It's the same. The only difference here is the download handler. Instead of using Scrapy handler, which will do Python request, I will connect Playwright and do the request with Playwright. So now let's run this spider. I will show you. And also it's plugged on Scrapy. So I will run this one. And you will see that Scrapy will open one browser. I will show you here. So the browser is opening and now controlled by Scrapy. So you see, I was connected to the home page. So I send the correct fingerprint by executing some JavaScript. And now I'm allowed on the website and I can do very quickly all the requests. As you see, it's very fast. I'm just opening, getting the data and not doing any rendering stuff. And I will get the 50 items in a few seconds. So now I can go back here to my spiders and you will see that I've got 50 items. That's perfect. Okay. But in the real world, anti-bot system will do something with the fingerprint. They won't just collect the fingerprint and check that we can execute JavaScript. So let me move to the next levels. So let's open the level 6 and you will see that if I'm running the level 6, so Scrapy is starting, opening now Chrome. So I will put you Chrome, this one, this time. And now I've got an error. I didn't collect any informations. So I've got this error, which is inconsistent time zones. Why I've got this error? It's because I'm using US IP address, but my browser is based in Bucharest. So I need to align both informations. I cannot change the IP address that I'm using. I will change the browser time zones. I can do that very easily in the parameters. So here I've got a parameter time zone ID. It's not Europe. I want America, Chicago. And if I'm starting again my spider, so Scrapy is opening the browser. I will show you. Okay, I've got the browser. Now the time zone is forced to America, aligned with a different IP address. And as you see, I can collect all the informations. That's perfect. So let me stop here. No need to collect all the data. Perfect. So that's all for me. Thank you very much for attending these presentations. Download Scrapy, join my company, and see you next time.
Oh, yeah. Thank you again, Fabien. We're really happy to see such a talk. It's really great to see the opportunities that we can do with web scraping. So yeah, thanks again for being with us, and have a good day.
Bye-bye. That's my pleasure.
Bye-bye. So I will welcome Sumaya. I'm waiting. Yeah, okay. So our next talk, Fabien was talking about something that you will talk about. He was talking about Playwright. So it's among the topics that you will talk about Cypress too, about something which is quite older, named Selenium. And that's our next talk with Sumaya. So welcome, Sumaya. That's a real pleasure to be here with you and to welcome you on this is Selenium Conf. I will let share you your screen.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, great. The stage is yours, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really happy to be here today. And I will be speaking about some of my favorite automation testing. Yeah, there is some old ones like Selenium, but we have new ones too. And yeah, it's really complicated to try to understand how they work and what's the best fit for your project. So today we are doing a little bit of a comparison between these three, and I will show you how I work with them and how are different and what's the best solution in your projects. So before I want to introduce myself really quickly, I am Sumaya. I'm from Italy, and I work as a senior developer at a little company in the north of Italy named Atlantis. I mostly focused on front end. I worked with Web3, so you can find me talking about front end stuff and Web3 stuff. A different conference. I travel a lot, and I love everything that is like technology. I like to talk about technology and electronics as well. So today we are talking about testing. Testing is something that not every developer likes to do, like myself. I didn't like doing testing, and I have to do it because I had to. So someone told me that I had to do it. So for most of my time as a developer, I did it just because I had to do it, and I couldn't like see the real benefit of writing tests. So why should I write some code to test that my code is working? So it's still running code. And then you have to work on the weekends because something is happening on production that it wasn't expected. So you finally realize that testing is really important. So for me, testing is front-end testing in particular is something that it's important to ensure that the quality of your web application is doing well, and that the functionalities that you have built are really working the way that they are expecting. In particular, today I want to talk about end-to-end testing because it's something that I'm really focusing on lately. And these three automation testing are all about end-to-end testing in this session. So end-to-end testing for me is a technique that verifies two important things. The first one is the functionalities of our application and the performance. These two things, in my opinion, are like the really important thing and the things that we need to be sure that are really working. And with end-to-end testing, we are like simulating some user real application, replicating these user scenarios, and we can really be sure that everything is implemented in the right way. So what's about automation testing? Automation testing are these developer friendly, but also not only developer. And this is something that I really care about because automation testing is also like some tools that also, if you are not really a developer, you are not into developer as your full-time job, you can still do it. So you just need some really easy know about code, and you can actually do. So automation testing are really important for developers, but also there are like teams that they are not like developers, they don't write code all day long, and still they are able to write the tests for the applications. And this makes sure that your application is working as we are expecting. For automation testing tools, for years we had just Selenium. It was like the number one. There were other like competitors, but not doing so well in comparison to Selenium. So for years we just had the majority of developers were using Selenium. Today I want to do a comparison between these three, because like Selenium is the oldest one, the most used, but still we had so many in the last 20 years. And I think that Cypress is maybe the first big competitor to Selenium. And lately we have also like Playwright that I think it's amazing. So I chosen the three that I worked with mainly, and let's see how they work. So let's start with Selenium, because of course is the oldest one. It was released, the first version, in 2004, and actually at the beginning it wasn't like working as well as it was expected. So it took some time to have a really good version about this tool. In particular, I want to talk about Selenium WebDriver. That is like this this package that allows us to talk with our browser using these drivers, these browser drivers. So we can talk directly from Selenium to the browser. And the biggest important thing about Selenium is that works with every browser. So we have a big support of browsers, but not just browsers. We have big support of like a lot of programming language. So we don't have much difficulty of working with it. Other good things apart of the language support and the browser support is that Selenium have a large community, and means that we can find a lot of documentation, a lot of examples and demos online. So it's really easy to work with Selenium, even if it's not that easy, because we have support. So if we are stuck with something, if we have some troubles with some tests, and we write about it in the internet, we can find solution about everything. Some bad things about Selenium, not that bad, but still not excellent. It's a little bit slow in comparison to like the newest one. It's still really fast, but if we need to make a comparison between the newest one, we can like see some slow if we have a lot of tests, of course. Flaky tests, it means that sometimes we don't actually give the right answer to our test. So sometimes it's like passed, but it's not that passed. And for example, sometimes it happens that if we are checking like the click on a button, but the button is not rendered yet, sometimes it's clicked and it clicks the button even if it's not ready yet, like the element is not ready yet, and we get an error. But it's not like a real error, because the test is not completed. So sometimes is like the test is not passed and you don't get an actual error about it, and you don't know. It's like a little bit like strange to work with that, but it's like not that common to have that. And it's a little bit complex to set it up at the beginning. So if you are not that expert to get into it, it's a little bit difficult, but still it's really common to work with it. So I want to make a little demo. We are doing a demo for every automation testing tool, and I want to use the same project. So we have a simple project, and we'll use that for the three of them, so we can do a real comparison of everything. So let's go to our code. So we have this project that is actually just HTML and JavaScript. And HTML, it's a simple calculator. Let's run it really quick so we can like see it in action. It's 3,000, yes. So if we do 10 and 5, we can add it, we get the result, and we can subtract and get the result. So it's really easy just to understand how it actually works. So in this case, we have Selenium. So we are working in particular with Selenium WebDriver. So we have to install this package. And once we have it, we don't need so much configuration in this case, because we are doing like a real simple one. For the tests, we have these tests that I've written. I'm using Selenium WebDriver for like, we need this driver that will connect us to a browser. In this particular case, I'm using Chrome because like it's my favorite one. So I'm using Chrome. And with this driver, I need to tell him where should we browse that. So we need to add the URL of our application, and then just really simple. If you are like into code, into writing tests, it's like really simple as like unit tests or something like that. For like HTML, we just have to have some indicator to the inputs that we need to find. So in this case, I need to find the element that have the AD num1, that is like the first input, and we send case. It means that we are writing something on these inputs. So we are writing 10 on the first input and 5 in the second input. And then we are clicking the button that has the add. So we are doing an addition. And then we are like finding the element result, so the text of the actual result, and we need to make sure that the result, it will be like result 50. And if we don't get these results in particular, so if this like string comparison is not the same, we will throw an error that is addition test failed. So in this case with Selenium, we need to check also like the to catch the errors, so, and to add an actual message if this test is not passed. Same thing for the subtraction. We are just getting the result, and we are making sure that the result is 5. If we don't get that, we have subtraction test failed. And then we need to actually run this function. It's just like a simple function. So let's run this test with just node tests node, and we are like running the code. All tests passed is the message that we are getting here because everything was fast. It was really fast. I want to add some delay just to show you actually how it works. So yeah, I've just rewritten the same thing with adding some sleep in between, so we can rerun it and see it a little bit slower. So as you can see, we are adding the actual numbers, and then we have the result. The first result is correct, the second result is correct. So we are getting all tests passed. Let's see really quick if we have like an error in this case for like the result. So 10 and 5, if we are adding, the result is 15. So we are getting the error, the test failed, addition test failed, because we was expecting for 13. So in this case, we just get this error. We don't have an actual indicator of where the actual error is, and this is something that is still missing. And as you can see, once the error is thrown, it will not continue to try the other test. So it will stop at the test that is failing. So this is all about Selenium. In this, we are making it really simple. So let's move on to Cypress. Cypress, by the way, it's like my favorite one. So yeah, it came 10 years after Selenium. So, and it was a real competitor to Selenium because it was something really new. It was, for the first time, it was developed from developers to developers. And the most important things in this case was to make the developer experience the best. In fact, if you go to Cypress website, you will find definition of Cypress. That is, Cypress is an open source framework that takes out the pain of front-end developers. And yeah, and this is actually really true, because it's actually really simple to use, really fast to configure it and stuff, and you can actually understand everything is going on, and you can like rewatch everything. And yeah, it was like the first actual framework, actual tool that came and made a real difference for testing. It's specialized in end-to-end testing. So in our like example is like really good, because Cypress doesn't have, as the others, main specialization. So it's specialized in end-to-end, and you can do like small stuff with it, but you can do it really well. So in fact, also like for language support, we just have support for JavaScript and TypeScript. So yeah, we don't cover other programming language, but if you use JavaScript and TypeScript, I think that Cypress is really the best solution, because it's specialized in that. So it's built really well to work with that. So good things about Cypress: developer experience is great. We have automatic waiting. So it was like the first time we see automating waiting. And this is mean that if an element is not rendered yet, Cypress automatically, you don't have to tell him anything. It will like wait until the component is actually ready to use, until it's actually use it, and we have an amazing error report. So we don't have to write the errors for every test as we have to do with Selenium. In this case, Cypress will do everything automatically, and it will indicate in particular where the error have been. So some concepts about Cypress. There are so many stuff that you can do with it, but you need plugins for it. So sometimes you want to do something and you don't know that actually there is a plugin to do it. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to know what you can do, what you can't do. So with experience, it will be like really good. But maybe at the beginning, you may think that you are limited to do stuff, but there are a lot of plugins that you can add to the framework, and you can use and add addition functionalities. Limited browser support, we just have mainly Chromium and only JavaScript, but still we love it with that. So let's see the demo really quick. We have the same demo with Cypress. We need to install Cypress, and we have a little configuration where we are telling like the base URL. If you want to add some fixtures, you can add it. I don't usually use them, but you can do it. And then when you install Cypress, you will like get these files already like ready for you, and you just have to write your tests. So we have this before each. So before every test, we need to visit like a clear web application, and then we are getting like the inputs and clicking the button like just as in every like tests. And then we are just getting the result. So the string of the result that should have this text in particular. So we're just telling that this test will have this particular result, and we don't need to care about like the errors, the possible errors, because Cypress will tell us where the errors are. And same things for the subtraction. We're just clicking the button subtract and indicating the result that we want to get. There are two ways to run Cypress. You can just run it and it will work like in the background, and you just get the result of the test without like seeing anything. Or you can actually open the UI tool of Cypress, and yeah, I need to run it first, and then I will open Cypress. I need to choose what testing we are doing. We are doing end-to-end with Chrome, and here I need to select the file of the test. It is like my tests, and it will run here, and I will get here all the tests. You can see like a little recap here that all the tests are passed. And if you want, here you can actually like revisit step by step what's going on. And yeah, it's really easy to debug, and it's really clear what's going on. And I think this is really helpful. If you get an error, it's really easy to actually find the error and understand where it is. Let's see really quick fail tests, because this is what we care about. Let's redo this really quick. End-to-end testing, Chrome. We need to choose the file, and yeah, this is failing, but it still has checked also like the last one. Even if this first one has failed, you can rewatch it, and here you have the error expected to have result 10, but the text was result 15. And actually in the code, as you can see, they are indicating in particular the line of code and where the error is. So if you get an error, it is really, really easy to redebug it and find the actual problem. Okay, let's stop this and let's move on to our last one, the younger one. That is Playwright. Playwright is a Microsoft product, and it came 10 years. It's not like 10 years, but 6 years after Selenium, after Cypress, sorry. And it is like really young, 4 years for Playwright, but it has like a strong growth. And this is mainly because it's something similar to the past. So it's really similar to Selenium, but with all like the good parts of like the newest automation testing tool. So it has a big support for programming language like Selenium, but it's like we have something new. So language and browser support as Selenium, it's amazing. We have this headless mode. That is means that we can run Playwright without like opening the actual browser, so we can get like everything working like on the background. And we have support for mobile emulation, and this is like a big thing for like testing. Cons for Playwright, we have complex APIs, so it's a little bit complex to work with it at the beginning. It's not that intuitive, and we have a small community because, of course, it's actually really young. Let's see how it works. So here we have Playwright. You can use Playwright as it is with like Jest, or you can use these Playwright tests. And I think this is like the best solution, in my opinion. So let's see, the tests are really simple. So we are using Playwright tests. We need this configuration serial because we are wanting our tests to be consecutive. We need to configure the base URL of our application, and then we have the same, like we fill the inputs, click the button, get the result, and indicate what the result should be. So yeah, we have some configuration that we can do, and this is like the headless. We can set true if we don't want like the actual browser to open, or false if we want the browser to open. Let's see it like the two. We just run our application and run our tests. It's really really fast actually. It will open up, do the things, and it will close. If we make headless true, it will not open the browser. We just get the errors, the information about the tests here. So yeah, it's really easy, really quick, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. So in conclusion, let's make a little bit of a recap and a comparison about these three. So which one is the best testing tool? So the real answer is it depends. It depends what you need to do and how you are working with it and what your project is about. So Cypress and Playwright are becoming like really popular, are the youngest one, are like making something like a really hard time for Selenium, even if it's like still the most used one. Cypress is like more a package, so you have a lot of an ecosystem because you have everything you need, and you need to be like in a certain ecosystem to work with it. Playwright, it's a little bit freedom, so you can use different programming language, do different type of testing, not just end-to-end testing and JavaScript as in Cypress. Cypress use Mocha for testing framework, With Playwright, you can use Mocha, you can use Jest or Jasmine. You can use you have a real support for that. Selenium and Cypress have a strong community because they are just older, and you can find a lot of documentation, a lot of examples online. With Playwright, it's too young, so we need just sometimes, and we need to work with it to actually find out if there are some troubles with it. If we have small or large projects, we can work with the three of them. But if we have some complex one, are still best Selenium and Playwright. Cypress has some limitation, in particular if we want to test multiple tabs in the same time. It works just a tab for a time. So if we have some complex things, the best is to pass to Selenium or Playwright. If we are working with JavaScript, I think that Cypress is the best solution, but still also like Playwright. Playwright, it's actually written in TypeScript. So if we are working with JavaScript, we need to use JavaScript technologies to test, and Cypress and Playwright are great options. If we work in Microsoft Stack, it's best to use Microsoft technologies like Selenium or Playwright. Playwright is actually a Microsoft tool, and I've seen a lot of Microsoft developers work passing from Selenium to Playwright. And yeah, so this is my consideration. Here you can find on my GitHub the demos that we have seen. If you want to play with it, add something to it and make it a little bit harder. And yeah, here is where you can find me online. If you want to connect, I'm really happy to do it. And yeah, thank you very much, and hope it will be helpful.
Thank you, Sumaya. So you are linked to see Sumaya online if you want to see her for events. She will be present for NG Belgrade, but it's already sold out. But if you next month there is NG Rome, and if you're around, there are still some tickets. So you will have the opportunity. I don't know what talk you will do for NG Rome.
And Jerome, I will talk about PWA application. Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you again for this talk, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very
Sumaya.
much, and have a nice day.
So our last speaker for this first event. We are so excited. It's Daniel. Daniel is the Grandmaster Jedi of Angular Space, a place for you, for the community, to find articles, to live as a community. I'm just waiting for Daniel to open his cam. Yeah. Welcome on stage.
Hello.
Hello.
Perfect. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Great.
Can you share your screen?
Yeah, just working on it. Great to meet you in person finally. At least online.
I won't spoil the talk as much. I know that you created an open source project to help people with the Angular 16 upgrade to make sure that some libraries that are not maintained anymore are able to work with this update.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think I solved the screen issue. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's perfect. So the stage is yours, and thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Daniel Glazner, and as mentioned, I'm a founder of Angular Space, also Microsoft MVP and NX champion, and I'm creating this cool place for every Angular developer to find validated knowledge and have a chance to basically learn from the content that is validated by the mentors. Jerome is one of the mentors that is reviewing the articles before they get published. And other than this, we have many other things. We are teaching new people to write. This is a program where we actually invite people to write and teach them how to publish articles, win the various giveaways, and so on and so forth. But this presentation is not about Angular Space, so I only briefly in a brief introduction to my project. This presentation is about the upgrading to Angular 16 and removal of NGCC, because usually with Angular applications, they are known for easy upgrades. We have migrations that are doing the most work for us. There were some more difficult upgrades along the way, like when you have, let's say, Angular 8 and you want to upgrade to Angular 17, you might face some more issues, but usually due to these migrations, these updates are frictionless and pretty easy to do, to the point where Angular 16 has been introduced. But let's get there slowly. So this is a timeline that I have prepared to showcase the route that we have gone through with Angular. To this day, you are going to see people use the 2010 AngularJS logo on various articles. You are going to see, for a long time, people use the original Angular 2 logo, the one in the middle. And the latest one is the latest of the release, which was introduced with Angular 17. And for every nitpicking person looking at this slide, I have placed the No View Engine Lips Support 2023 Angular logo as the new logo, only because I want to associate visually the achievement of dropping NGCC, because it brings issues along the way, but it's a great achievement to finally get rid of it and not worry about View Engine libraries anymore. So the actual support for NGCC has been dropped in Angular 16, and this new logo has been introduced in Angular 17. So this is only for the visual representation. And everyone who worked with AngularJS probably noticed the root scope and heart at the bottom left part, and everyone that knows AngularJS knows what that means. So that's a little Easter egg for everyone working with that old framework. Very cool old framework. Let's go forward. So View Engine and Ivy, what are these? So I tried to create and pick the best description possible, because I didn't want it to be the most technical description. I wanted it to be easy and understandable for everyone. So it's a rendering pipeline. Ivy and View Engine are rendering pipelines, and these rendering pipelines basically turn framework's code into in a way that browser needs to display the actual application that you create. So you can call them translators, compilers, so browser knows how to display your code. So why did we even start with View Engine? Because when we transitioned from AngularJS to Angular, it was a big update, pretty much new framework at that time, and also very controversial because people were not ready for such a huge jump and dealt with the upgrades for a long time. Even to this day, we have a lot of AngularJS applications that have not been fully upgraded to Angular 2. So why do we start with View Engine? Why did Angular team start with View Engine and not Ivy straight away? So this was basically an integral part of this transition process. It was required to place it in between to basically allow for this easy transition to the new technology, which was Angular 2. And the goals that Angular team wanted to make with Angular 2, like the main goals, was new component-based architecture, dependency in the injection, and improved performance. And View Engine was needed to be placed here, so we can already go to the Angular 2. And in the meantime, to prepare a space and time to introduce something more robust, which basically that was the Ivy engine. So why Ivy? and why was it better than the Vue engine? So Ivy was a big step forward and introduced many improvements along the way. I didn't want to go full blown on history of this because it's not a history lesson. We are going to go soon into the latest, greatest, how to best manage upgrading to Angular 16. So briefly about Ivy, it introduced many features, many improvements like tree shaking, faster compilation, smaller bundle size, better debugging, lazy loading components, better type checking, and paved the way for the future improvements that you're seeing right now that are being introduced in the latest Angular versions going forward. So I placed the quote by Minko from one of his articles from 2021 to visualize that Ivy wasn't something that wasn't planned. It was a multi-year effort that was planned and slowly unfolded. And you might not realize it straight away, but going from Vue engine to Ivy was almost like creating a completely new framework under the hood of what you're actually seeing. So with every upgrade along the way, the Ivy came together and Vue engine slowly faded away, while you and your development experience only improved, and you didn't see all of that big mechanism going on under the hood. And this also explains this period where Angular didn't have too many new features that improved development experience because everyone was busy transitioning from Vue engine to Ivy. It was very, very big and long effort to do so. So thanks to Ivy, you're now seeing all of these nice improvements like standalone components, new control flow, and signals and all of that. Everything is possible thanks to Ivy, which is much more optimized and ready for performance and new features. So when I did a little bit of research on the Ivy, I found this nice timeline of the rollout. It's coming from the Chris Kohler blog. Hopefully I didn't butcher the last name too much. I placed the source link at the bottom. And it nicely depicts how the rollout of Ivy has come through the Angular version. So starting with Angular 7, there was no Ivy. We had Vue engine. Going to V8, we had Vue engine by default, and Ivy was opt-in in preview, in developer preview mode. And going even further down the line, we have V9 and V11 and V12, which basically made Ivy a default rendering pipeline, and Vue engine still available to be used. So you didn't have to use Ivy and transition over to Ivy. You could use the Vue engine still, but Ivy was default. And as you can see, from V7 to V12, we had Vue engine, and from all of that, for that long path, the Ivy came to existence, and finally in V13, Vue engine has been removed from the Angular applications, and Ivy was the default without any way to turn on Vue engine and use Vue engine. And this marks the place where a lot of libraries that we have installed in years, a lot of companies installed in years, have not went through that upgrade. So a lot of these libraries that use Angular under the hood that have been installed all over the projects have been stuck on V12, V9, V8, and even V7. These libraries work with the newest versions after the V13 removal, only because of the NGCC, basically. And NGCC was introduced to fix that issue because it wasn't feasible to, it was a long time to, maybe not a long time because it was only removed in 13, so before the actual removal that happened in V16, there was not a big amount of time to get rid of these libraries. So they introduced the NGCC, which is Angular Compatible Compiler. And what it does is basically taking your dependencies, which are built on Vue engine as the main rendering pipeline, and make them work with Ivy thanks to this compiler. And this compiler stayed with us until the version 16. So with version 16, the compiler has been removed. It was a great compiler, great feature that allowed many projects to upgrade without much friction, but it also came with a lot of cons and support and the weight and all of that. So it was a good call to remove it, but like we have faced and found ourselves in a place where we have, like, not everyone, but some of the companies have found themselves in a place where a lot of old dependencies remained, and there is no easy way to move from 15 to 16, 17 and forward. So they don't have access to the control flow, they don't have access to signals, and everyone wants to trade it and be able to go from 15 further. And like right now, there is no easy way to do it. There is no workaround. If you want to transition from 15 to 16, you need to gradually remove the libraries that you have that are not compatible, replace them with different ones, or basically write the code internally so it like clones the feature that you needed from the certain library. Good practice overall is to have as little dependencies as possible. That's obvious, but it's not so easy to achieve when you are already in that situation. So let's say you are at version 15 and you have 10 libraries that you need to remove and rewrite a lot of code while removing them. It's often not feasible when the company that you are working for or the client that you are working for requires you to deliver features, and you have to do it at some point. So it's always going to be a fight, and it's going to be a long process to finally move away from these old libraries. And then I thought to myself that there should be a way to improve that process. There should be a way to help these companies, these projects, to not to go through that long process, but do it gradually while enjoying the latest versions of Angular. And the first library that I thought of as a helper tool was the ng16 dep audit. This is the name I have given to this library. You can, right now in your projects, if you are on v15 or lower, you can run npx ng16 dep audit, and you are going to receive the output that is going to basically quickly evaluate your code base and tell you which libraries are not compatible. If you scan this QR code, you're going to go straight to the repository. So if you want to do so, you can do it. And this is the output that you're going to get in your terminal. You're going to see the current libraries that you have that may need upgrading. And it's going to also inform you that these may need upgrading. But on the red, this is the part that should interest you the most, the libraries that you need to replace or remove to go further. So running this command can buy you a quick evaluation before you venture on the planning of that departure from these old libraries. You can see all of them that need to be removed, and you can plan accordingly without running the upgrade itself. So that's quite handy. And that was the first thing. And the second thing that came to my mind right away was to create a project that is going to basically fork the libraries that are no longer upgraded and upgrade them in one single monorepo. So ngx maintenance, you can scan the QR code and go straight to the GitHub repository. It's still young, it's still developing, and it's all being done in the free time. So you're welcome to contribute. You're welcome to provide the libraries that you want us to upgrade for you. And within the NX workspace, we are keeping every library that we have forked with one set of dependencies and upgraded to the latest version of Angular, retaining all of the functionality. So when you find yourself having some of these here on the red, you can replace them with the ones coming from the ngx maintenance repository. This way, you are able to basically upgrade to the newest version of Angular without worrying about it, because these are no longer containing the view engine core, because we have upgraded them for you. And it's not a path for you to never get rid of them, because you should get rid of them eventually. But you now have a lot of more time to do it. You can continue with Angular upgrades to have your security up to date, to have latest features, and have these old code snippets still working with those libraries, but you should plan accordingly and still remove them. So this NGX maintenance is basically a transitioning project that is going to help the companies to swiftly move over to Angular 16. And here I have to mention Jordan Hall, which is basically a main architect of that monorepo and started the whole code. I came up with the idea, and we discussed about the idea. I didn't have too much time to code myself. So he pretty much created all of the current code, upgraded some of the libraries already, and provided some cool ways to engage with them. And here's the list of the libraries that we have currently upgraded. And as you can see, we have like NGX pipes, NG2 image viewer, we have NG2 search filter, Angular material rate drawer, devkit, npm API, which is something that is internal for the npx maintenance and utils and all of that. You can check this out when you actually look up this repository. You can see the internals, and while you are looking at the internals, you can also go ahead and file this issue. We are collecting the requests for libraries that will need upgrading, that you want to have upgraded because they are keeping you from upgrading. So if you file that request in here, we are going to fork this library, add this to the repository, and allow you to move on with the upgrades with your project. So you are no longer waiting forever. And yeah, we are like looking for people to help. We are very eager to run this project, to make it bigger, to improve. In future, we are planning to actually introduce automated ways to fork the libraries and upgrade them, so it doesn't have to be a manual process, because manual process takes a lot of time. So in the future, we are going to scan the npm registry, pull in and fork the libraries automatically and upgrade them as long as it's possible and easy, because with some libraries it's not so easy. You need to do some manual work in there, but a lot of them are easy to do. And this is basically the stuff that I wanted to show you about navigating the upgrade. There is no magic tool, there is no magic way to get over it. With Angular 16, you have to get rid of those libraries, and if you want to have a little bit more time to do so, please use our project, file a request for your libraries you want to move, and we can do it for you. And when you scan this QR code, you are going to see the whole presentation and slides available for you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That's one of the biggest challenge, to make sure that the open source community doesn't struggle to find up-to-date libraries. That's about the nature of open source some way, but that's sad to have some isolated project that's just live during some maybe 1 year, 2 years, and people start stop maintaining them, and to have such an organization being able to help to keep going with these libraries, really helpful. Thank you so much for this.
This is the only way. Like, there is no other way. We can't force the authors to go back to the libraries and upgrade them. So we have to do it for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are so many libraries not maintained, and it's some way impossible to contact maintainers. You don't have contact, or you don't have feedback. That luckily it's open source, so you can fork it. You can, but sadly, yeah, that's at the cost of the community.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thank you so much. It's the end of this track, but that's not the end of the event. In 10 minutes, we have a closing note to thank everyone for this first event. It's been a journey for us. we're so happy to welcome experts like Daniels, but also beginners to be able to give chance for everyone to talk to the community. So we are really happy to be here with you, with the community, and with all the speakers. Thank you again, Daniel. And see you everyone in 10 minutes. I will share the link for the closing notes. And see you there.